Yes, ma'am.
All right. Good evening. Today is Thursday, April 16th. The time is 6:03, and I'm going to call this special meeting to order. Can I get a roll call, please?
Flores Carroll.
Here.
Tobias.
Present.
Doza.
Here.
Medina.
Here.
Zapata.
Here.
Harris.
Here.
McKinney.
Here.
All right, looks like we have all 7 here. We have a quorum. The city council welcomes, we're going to do up next, citizens' comments. The city council welcomes comments from citizens. Those wishing to speak are encouraged to sign in before the meeting begins. Speakers will be provided with an opportunity to speak during this time period on any agenda item or any other matter concerning city business. And we ask that you observe the 3-minute time limit. All right, first, I have Howard Connell.
Okay, good evening, Mayor, Council. I just want to speak a couple minutes on this issue having to do with overcrowding of staff and looking for a facility for them. I'm getting a little tired of watching the city driving into the future with a St. Christopher statue on the dashboard and a rabbit's foot in her pocket. Having said that, one of the council members here asked me, we had a conversation about this $11 million landfill down here, and I was asked if I thought it was necessary or if it was a want, and I said it's definitely necessary. This office space that we're trying to solve a problem with, that's definitely necessary. But when I look at everything, I'm wondering, why are we asking for a forensic audit if we know where we're at? The fact is, we don't know where we're at. And so I'm going to stick with my original premise and say that I'm suggesting that in 6 months, we have an election coming up again, and the seats that are going to get filled are going to be what I call, quote unquote, permanent compared to what they are now. And I think the next 6 months, the city should use it to dig into the core of the city, find out where the problems are, where we're at financially, and then at the end of 6 months, whoever gets elected will have all the pieces of the puzzle in front of them. They'll have a picture. They won't have to guess. They won't have to make a decision hoping it's going to work and finding out it was wrong, like perhaps tearing down this building over here, which is a great building site. So I just want to encourage restraint right now and dig into the guts of the city and find out where we're at. It seems to be the only thing that makes sense to me, since we're asking for these audits. And, where were these people 6 months ago? Everything is dumped on you at one time, and we've got too many needs that have to be addressed. And I think to go into it blindly right now is not a good idea, politically or maybe financially or whatever. The 4 candidates that won their seats all campaigned on intelligent development and decisions and cutting costs and tightening the belt and find out where the heck we're at. And it's scary hearing things being thrown around up here and given 3 options to pick from. And if you ask somebody a question, they have no answer because they just don't have any answer because they don't know what information they're dealing with. They're in the dark. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you. Up next, I have Betty Conley.
Good evening, Council and Mayor and everybody. My name is Betty Conley. I'm a resident of Cal, and I don't know if I can say this or not, so I'll just say it and then you can say no. I know that there has to be, the council appoints somebody in place of the city manager, and I just wanted to make a suggestion of who I thought would be a good appointee. So stop me now if I can't say that. But I think where we're at, and it's not against anybody, whoever you're thinking, but Mr. Perez would be perfect. He has been here long. He knows the city. He knows the finances, and you have budget coming up. And I was always taught before you cross the bridge, you make sure it's sturdy and you have the right braces you need to make sure that bridge holds. So I think somebody that's been here so long and knows the city so well, I think he should be appointed. And that's my own opinion now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Up next, I have Cindy Bolding.
Good evening. The children's book entitled The Giving Tree is a poignant story about friendship and having a purpose. The tree and the boy interact their whole lives, and the story ends with the old tree, now only a stump, providing a place for the now tired old man to sit and rest. Having each other makes them both happy. They each still have purpose. I moved to Kyle to be near my children and grandchildren. I had retired, and my mother, father, and brother had all passed away. My future was clearly in Texas. I wanted to foster that special bond between a grandmother and her grandchildren. I needed to still have purpose. I arrived in Kyle knowing no one. I felt like I had moved to the moon. I was determined to build a meaningful life for myself. Thankfully, I was invited to the Senior Center, which quickly became my lifeline with the beginning of new friendships and opportunities. I found that moving to Kyle to be near grandchildren is an overwhelmingly common theme. The Senior Center provides an anchor for me at this stage in life. Retiring and moving is challenging for many reasons, and one is developing a whole new set of friends. At the Senior Center, I'm able to fellowship with my friends and use my talents and abilities to serve others. It's not just about the opportunities for exercise, learning, and eating meals together. It's about the fellowship. It's about sharing our joys, our challenges, our sorrows, and our grief. It's about finding that support group, that sense of family and community we all crave. It's about volunteering together to support a meaningful variety of events that boost our mental health, as being home alone can be quite overwhelming. It's about still having purpose. Texas continues to be a popular place for seniors to relocate, yet often facing challenges navigating benefits and services and looking for new doctors. I'm thankful to serve on the Board on Aging as we attempt to identify the senior community's needs. Senior citizens strengthen communities by volunteering, sharing expertise, mentoring, fostering cultural richness, and enhancing community diversity. We shop, we vote, we drive economic stability through homeownership, senior living services, and stable tax contributions. Dawn Conley works tirelessly as a volunteer with the Senior Center to provide programming that addresses our physical and mental needs, and it is vitally important that the city supports her efforts. I'm asking the mayor and council to recognize, prioritize, and show with your actions that you value the seniors of Kyle. We want to continue to have purpose to the very end of our lives, sliding into home plate, tired, exhausted, and joyful from a life well lived. Please help us meet that goal.
Thank you. Up next, I have Sarah Onken.
Hello, Council. My name is Sarah Onken, and I serve on your Planning and Zoning Commission, and I'm here tonight to speak about items 8 and 9. I share Council's goal of wanting to ensure that our boards and commissions function with professionalism and with mutual respect. I think that's a very reasonable expectation, and I understand the concerns that brought forward these items in the first place. That said, I don't believe that asking the city manager to develop a full code of conduct is the right tool to respond to this, and I'll unpack why I feel that way. First of all, the volunteers who serve the city of Kyle already meet a very high standard in my experience. So speaking about the Planning and Zoning Commission over the last few years, there's always been a culture of preparation, of good faith, of respect for the process. And a formal code is going to signal that this body who appoints people doesn't even trust the people that they're appointing to do the job properly. So I think that'll discourage people of high quality from wanting to pursue these openings when they come available. Second, the scope described in the directive is very broad. It includes standards for professional conduct, public communication, engagement with residents, colleagues, staff, council, plus enforcement, plus removal processes. Developing all of that will take a real amount of staff time. And I think that that time would be better spent on tasks that are going to directly serve the residents of the city of Kyle. Then there's also the matter of regulating public speech. I'm sure there's First Amendment worms in a can that are waiting to come out. I don't know anything about it, but do we want to take that on? So what I would offer as an alternative, right now the item already has a line about a removal process, and I think that's what the focus of your action should be. If you have a clear documented process to review and, if necessary, remove someone whose action falls well outside the scope of what's reasonable and acceptable, I think that that's a reasonable tool for y'all to pursue that doesn't layer new policy onto all of the volunteers who are currently serving Kyle with so much dignity and passion and care. So thank you for your service and for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Up next, I have Kenneth Rocha.
Good evening, council, mayor. Good luck, Brian. Good luck. We'll build upon the successes that you were able to. I say we as a community, as well as the staff that you wholeheartedly support and that look up to you and the leadership you provided. So best of luck. As a public servant for over 20 years, I've been asked to work out of a broom closet, literally with janitorial supplies in the same room. I've been asked to work out of temporary buildings. It's even gone to a part where we were told there is no space for you inside a building to work out of your city-issued vehicle and or personal vehicle. Emotionally, is that fair? No. But this is where leadership comes in. We knew the end goal. We knew that it was temporary. We knew that somebody had our back in pursuing a suitable space, but knowing that it wasn't just about how Kenneth Rocha felt, that there's an entire community that is impacted by that decision. When COVID happened, everybody had to change. But what we realized was there's hybrids, work schedules, there's teleworking opportunities, and I believe some have already taken place here in Kyle. And I'm confident that the city of Kyle and y'all have the opportunity to ensure that those teleworking opportunities are in place for staff to demonstrate your support for them. But also understanding that $1 million decision, temporary decision today, affects maybe what we could do in the future. And so as a public servant, I wanted to allow y'all to recognize that we see that. I don't speak for City of Kyle staff, but as a staff member that's been told and been placed in those serious different scenarios, we recognize it. Regarding the Unified Development Code rewrite, we are at a key point in our city. We can move Kyle from a model of growth at any cost to progress through productivity. Please don't put the taxpayers on the hook for millions to financially support more debt. We need residential standards that don't sacrifice the ability to build diverse housing types. We need deregulation through our code. This way we can all focus on right-sizing our streets, building parks for our festivals, supporting the library programs, and ensuring we have water for the future. Thank y'all.
All right, thank you. Those are all the comment forms I have. Is there anybody else that would like to speak? All right. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm short. Hey, good evening. My name is Dawn Conley, and I'm winging this, but I think the beauty of having city council is that it's not politicians. And with that, it's people that are common, that come here with different talents and different wants and desires to make Kyle better in the city that they serve. And I think what happens is that because of the common person thing is we forget how to speak or interact in a different manner. And just like teachers and others, we take classes that talk about like how to remove I from our comments, or how to know that I love you but really like negates the I love you, and like these word plays to help like de-escalate or get your point across in a healthy manner. And maybe a suggestion would be, because y'all are common people, that just like several years ago, Mayor Mitchell was saying he bought books to help make himself a better mayor. Maybe y'all can invest in like a class that would bring a psychologist or a speech person to help y'all round out how you speak to one another and how do you speak to the public. Because I know you have to talk to your workers and they'll take whatever, but it could really make a difference to get your point across, to de-escalate things, to just make things better for you. And so my suggestion, and would be happy with my tax dollars, is give you guys that time to team build and learn the beauty of speech when you think before you speak, and know how to work together in a way that has a beautiful language. And I appreciate that you all are coming from commonality and are not politicians and have to think crazy, but are here to serve. And I'd like to see all the success and work together. So my suggestion in the last 1 minute is, again, maybe if there's time, I don't know the budgeting, but time for you guys to sit, not just for yourselves, but get a teacher and speak on that, and even make it where it goes to commissions and boards and that, if they have to speak to the public and among themselves, it could be helpful for them because they're just common people too that are serving. So thank you.
All right, thank you. I think we have, is it one or two? All right, up next, I have Michael McDonald.
Well, I wish I was up here speaking about unicorns, candy, and puppets, but I'm not. We have problems here, and I believe agenda number 9 for the trying to squelch free speech for citizens is wrong. Don't be fooled. This is a Trojan horse. You let this thing in, and we're gonna have problems. And I think that's what's going on. Is we got some people here that don't care that we let a Trojan horse in. You're not going to stop my free speech, whether I'm on a committee or not. I'm a citizen of Kyle. I live in the United States of America, and I can speak whatever I want, even if it offends you. There's more I want to say, but I'm going to temper it a little bit because this really upsets me that we have this happening right in our backyard. It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. As a council member, you're going to hear things you don't like. People are going to say things you don't like. You know what? Grow thick skin. Sorry. You chose that position. I didn't make any one of you run. You chose it yourself. And you knew what the risks were. You knew what was going to happen. So knowing that, you grow thick skin. You're going to have people telling you things that you don't like. And don't run to TikTok or don't run to Facebook and start screaming about what someone said. Deal with it. I want to say, Ms. Zapata, Howard did not mean what you think he meant. And you knew that too, just like he did. And that's wrong. You were playing them.
Okay, thank you. Up next, I have Stephanie McDonald.
Good evening, members of council. On items 8 and 9, I'm glad this is being brought back. As my husband said, everybody knows that last meeting, well, these items were brought forth, but the gentleman that said, "I'm coming after you," did not mean it as a threat. We all know that. It's common knowledge. We have rules in place already for meetings. Councilmember Zapata wants to create new rules, but she will not adhere to the rules we already have because you cannot personally attack someone and you call the mayor a liar. That's a personal attack. That's not a physical threat, but it's a personal attack. You broke the rules. You want to have rules for other people, but not for yourself. You don't want to follow them. That's wrong. That's not leadership. So I'm unclear about the statement you made on communicating to the media representing the city council because you've also been doing that. I don't know if you want that stopped. It appeared that you did. But I'm glad originally when that was brought up, now it's been kind of changed about what you're really wanting to do. So I'm glad it's being brought back up again because we need to know exactly what Councilmember Zapata wants the city staff, what she wants to direct them to do. And it's not that we're afraid of curbing our First Amendment rights when she's saying that we don't even know what they're going to bring forth. You've got to tell them what to bring forth. You've got to give them an idea. That just, it can't be that broad. So you've started escalating, you've started vision in this city and escalating it. And I just really wish you'd behave like a professional. It would help our city a lot more than trying to divide us. On number 7, as has been said, experience in finance would be good in looking for an interim city manager. We're coming into budget season, and I think it's going to be a tough budget. And so I think it would be good to have somebody that's got budget experience. Board requirements, speaking of rules, board and commission requirements state you cannot serve on 2 boards simultaneously. Jake Webb serves on P&Z as well as Council Compensation Committee. That's 2 boards, 2 committees. So I'd like y'all to look into that and see why it is that we have rules that we're not following, and yet we want to create new rules. And then the office space for transportation and public works, please think this through, the cost, the location, space, etc. Please think this through. Also, I drove with my mom over to the new community center, not the senior center anymore. And she even said, "I can't believe we're going to have to turn in here." So I hope you guys can make temporary, I don't know what you're planning. I saw it, but I didn't understand it all. The fix for the road. We've got to get that resolved before that place opens. We cannot have seniors turning in there. They have slow reflexes. It's a much quicker road than where they're at right now, so please consider that. Thank you very much for your time.
All right, thank you. That's all the forms I have. Would anybody else like to come and speak? Seeing none, I am going to close citizens' comments. Brian, is it okay if I talked to Julie Baggs? We had a customer, or not a customer, sorry. We had a employee appreciation lunch today, and I got there at the tail end, and so I just wanted to say a quick thanks and appreciation. Is that doable? Okay, all right. And so Julie was sweet enough to put this together for me, so thank you to her. This afternoon, the city hosted a luncheon for its employees to demonstrate appreciation for their service and impact on our community. The lunch was created by and for our City of Kyle employees and was attended by staff from across the city, including staff from the library, parks, finance, water, utility, IT, planning, engineering, communications, 311, municipal court, transportation, and public works, and the Kyle Police Department. That's a lot of departments. The City of Kyle employees' work directly affects the public safety, our infrastructure, utilities, our parks, our libraries, and our essential services. And many are behind the scene but critical to our community's well-being. It takes employees across all departments and all levels to serve our residents. During the event, the city recognized those employees reaching milestone anniversaries and have stayed with the city for at least 5 years and up to 25 years. Our employees also share a commitment beyond a job description, especially during emergencies, high demand periods, and times of change. And they remain committed to professionalism, reliability, and pride in public service. I'd like to say thank you for the choice of public service. Their work makes the city stronger, safer, and more connected. So I don't know if anybody else wants to say thank you to them, but I dropped by and they were outside play. I guess there was like a mean game of horse, like the bag game going on. And so hopefully next year more people can attend it and just give them a big shout out. Councilmember.
It was on my calendar, and unfortunately, I barely made it back into town from work to attend this meeting. But I really wanted to be there. Our staff is truly one of our best assets, and I can't appreciate them enough. I say all the time that they make us look good. We give them direction, and they take the football and run with it. I love it. So I really appreciate them.
All right, anybody else? All right. So what we're going to do for the meeting, because there are people here that I think want to stay for parts of the agenda, but we do have attorneys that we're paying by the hour, so we're going to take them back in executive, and we're going to talk about what we need, and then we'll come back out. We have a long executive with several other things, but we're going to do that at the end so we don't make you guys wait. So we're going to leave, go to executive, and then come back. Hopefully briefly. Thank you. Oh, wait, no. All right, the City Council will now go into executive session to discuss agenda items 1B and C pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071, 551.076, and 551.089. Thank you, guys. The time is 7:44. There was no action taken in executive, and there will not be action taken now. All right, we're going to do, since you guys were very kind enough, did Sarah leave? You guys were kind enough to stay. We're going to move up agenda items 8 and 9. And so, how this works, I've seen a lot of people were confused online why there were two items that looked exactly the same, but they weren't. So how a reconsideration works, we first have to take a vote whether or not to reconsider a vote, and then from there we take up the item again if it passes. If we decide we want to ask more questions or we want to approve it, then that's number 8, and then number 9 is just talking about the item again. So. Number 8, reconsideration of the vote at the April 7th City Council meeting to consider directing the city manager to research and return to council with a proposed code of conduct for members serving on city boards, commissions, and advisory bodies that establishes standards for professional conduct, public communication, and engagement with residents, colleagues, and staff and council, including enforcement mechanisms and a process for removal. Item presenter Courtney Goza.
Okay. So during our last meeting when we discussed this, I asked Councilmember Zapata, what that looked like to her, what those rules looked like. And she couldn't give any examples at that point. And then the next day, a clarification was posted. And so with that clarification, stating that she said that the goal was to establish basic standards such as decorum, limitations on speaking to media as a representative of council, and appropriate workplace boundaries with staff. I don't believe the intent for the item was to limit anyone's constitutional rights. However, the issue is not intent, it's just how broad the direction to staff was and what could ultimately come back for approval. And so since there was additional guidance that was given by Ms. Zapata, I felt like it was important to bring this back so that we could have a discussion of what this really looks like. And if we want to proceed forward, give better directions to staff on what we want to see.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Right now we're just talking reconsideration. Do we want to reconsider? Do we want to give better direction? So all questions should be posed to that, and then if we decide to move forward, then questions regarding that item can be brought up at the next agenda item. Councilmember Zapata.
My question is going to be, can you provide me another example of when there was a council item brought forth in which it was already like a predetermined, pre-planned idea of what exactly was supposed to happen? Because if I'm remembering correctly, when there was an item that you brought forth relating to posting all of the receipts to the city website, there was no clear direction on how to do that, because that is not the job of council. Our job is to direct staff to be able to research this information and then bring back to us options that we then discuss and we can either choose to do or not do. So if I'm not understanding that correctly, if you could remind me of another time when that was an expectation placed on a council item.
Typically we don't, but they go according to the direction that we give them during our discussions. And so that's informative for them to kind of see where our brain is going, what we're thinking, and it's not giving them specific directions, but it's the words that we discuss give them further guidance.
I guess my question is, do we not think that staff didn't understand it last time then?
It's very overly broad.
Councilmember McKinney.
Thank you. I would like to say that I kind of appreciated the fact that it was broad, because I didn't want staff to be making the judgment decision about what should be included. It was my intention that they would do research, they would look to see what other communities across Texas have done, and when they would bring back what theirs were. Let us pour through them, and we could pick and choose what we liked, what we didn't like. That way we could have a basis, a framework that we could build ours off of. I didn't think it was appropriate to give staff a narrow window to work within, because I feel like that's our job to do, is to take the broad and narrow it down to what we want specifically.
All right. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I'm going to start with my comments. I don't think any of this would be an issue, except for when the discussion happened on Facebook, there was actually direction that was saying, this is what staff is going to bring back. It was like interviews with the media, and I don't have it pulled up right now, but I think that's, for me, is where I kind of was like, okay, well, maybe I didn't understand what that direction was. And so I appreciate the fact that we're bringing it back and we're able to talk about it, because I think even members and volunteers, board members and commissioners, they were really worried about what was going to be brought back. And in the prior post, it was a mix of immigration issues versus safety issues, and it was just a convolution of all kinds of things. And so I thought you were right, Councilmember Zapata, when you said we don't know what staff is going to bring back. But then when there was a post saying, well, this is what's going to come back, then I thought, okay, let me look it up, because I don't want anyone to be confused. I think when we talk about things, I want to be very clear, because I don't want anyone to seem like we're out to get each other. We're all in this together. And so making sure that, oops, sorry.
You felt like that was not what you voted on?
Right, so,
Specifics?
yeah, so when I'm reading it online, I was like, oh, I didn't realize that's what it was that we were voting for. And so maybe there was a miscommunication online with what we were expecting staff to bring back. And I don't know if Councilmember Goza, you have it brought up.
I guess I can also say that I was asked to provide clarification, and I simply pulled out context of other examples that cities had done. And I said, these are options, but I never said this is specifically what staff is going to bring back, because I'm not able to make that determination. That's up to staff.
I agree.
To bring back. And and I used the exact language that I've used in the agenda item, and I merely pointed out that there are dozens of other cities who have items like this.
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Tobias.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, my voice is a little. What do we have already do we have anything written in our boards and commissions policy that addresses any kind of conduct? I think it has a lot of it has to do with attendance, correct? Like after a certain amount of meetings missed or whatever, then you could be considered for removal. But we don't have anything that I believe, because you and I worked on that, right? A couple of years ago when we were building the policy. That if I'm trying to understand what we're doing here, is the professional conduct and professional communication regarding boards and commission members. I just want us to be careful with that, because it is sometimes difficult just to get people to volunteer to do these boards. And when we're talking about boards, we're talking about all of them. And that includes kayak, which is those high school kids. So are we implementing them as well? So I guess it's just a matter of what it states in the board's policy about demeanor and communication and so forth. But maybe that's just what I'm trying to understand, what all of this is for.
Right, okay, so going back, two things that I didn't understand that could be brought back was do not speak to media to represent the city council unless otherwise discussed and agreed. Do not solicit political support from staff at workplace. Now, there is be welcoming to all speakers and provide each with equal public hearing time. But none of those were, I don't understand how that's what we knew the staff was going to bring back, because it was very much we don't know what's going to come back, so we don't know if there's a First Amendment violation or not. But then when I saw the detailed information, I was like, oh, I don't know if I agree with that, and I'm not sure if that's what council really knew that they were going to direct staff to do.
Well, if you finish reading the context of that, I merely just pulled out examples of things that could be done, because those are what exist in other cities. And that was it. So it wasn't, this is exactly what staff is going to bring back. It was, this is an example of what happens.
It says, this is why I believe this item should be, let's see. My goal is, okay, there seems to be a lot of confusion about ultimately misrepresented what item 36 brought to do. The agenda item as written does not state anything about limiting free speech, and I appreciate the mayor's response that it is wrong to assume that staff would bring back any suggestions that might do so. In many cities, the case is that the codes and rules establish bare minimum standards such as. But if that's direction that we want to go, and I'm not disagreeing, I'm just saying if that's something that we want to do, that's not language that was in the item or the motion.
Can someone clarify where that's not addressed? Because the intent of the item was to be brought as such. And I'm not going to sit here and beg either. If y'all don't want to reconsider this, or if y'all want to reconsider the vote, that's fine. I'm merely just trying to set some sort of guidebook, handbook, something, because for a lot of people, also entry onto boards and commissions is like the first time that they enter public servantry. And so if you look at other rules of procedure and codes of ethics and codes of conduct that exist across the state, a lot of it is also just like, hey, this is what it's like being a public servant. Like, welcome to the city. And these are the things that we practice. This is where you can go to ask for help. These are the different types of things that we're going to expect of you. This is how we represent our city. These are our values. So I am a little bit confused as to.
Well, I think there's already rules in place. Like, I don't know if you've read those rules for each of the different commissions and boards and the overall policy. And I think that's something else that we should consider is making sure that we're not sending staff back to do things that they've already done. And I'm sure they would bring back, hey, this is what we have in place, and it wouldn't take that much time. But just considering that some of these things are already set out, and this is not meant to say, no, we're not going to do it. This is just giving everybody an opportunity to make sure that we understand moving forward what we're going to direct our staff to do. Councilmember McKinney?
I feel like these conversations are the ones that we should have whenever they bring back all the options. That's my understanding of how the process works, and that was what I was expecting to happen after we voted on this.
Agreed. And so that's exactly why it's back, because what we talked about wasn't necessarily were the things that were being shared online. And so to make sure that there was a connection and that we knew what we were voting on, I think this is a great opportunity to say, you know what she made a motion on is exactly what we wanted. And so whatever is posted online or whatever was discussed openly, then there has to be an understanding with the residents that that is not necessarily what is going to be brought back. Because the people that were most concerned were the people that volunteer with our city. And so, I mean, residents matter, but volunteers who are directly affected, they matter even more so. You know, I want to make sure that everybody's comfortable volunteering. I mean, there was a real concern about the First Amendment rights, and we made it clear during that meeting, we can't say that's what it's going to be. And I don't know if anybody's on board for that. I'm not. And so maybe when we talk to staff, if we decide to reconsider it, we specifically say no First Amendment rights violations. Not that I think they would bring that back, but to give peace of mind to our boards and commission members that, hey, we are not interested in this. We're not interested in stifling your freedom of speech.
Yeah, I think for me it was having a framework that we can base off of for that absolute worst case scenario where we're like, okay, this is beyond acceptable and like you're no longer welcome as a volunteer. Like,
okay, and that should have been.
You hate to imagine that, but there are scenarios where that happens. I mean,
right.
if heaven forbid, somebody that's sat on our board all of a sudden is charged and convicted of child molestation, like I don't want them serving in our city. I think there needs to be a framework and process that we have in place to say, okay, this is how we replace you.
And I think that's great information. I think probably staff would need to know that, because you're thinking worst case scenario. Mm-hmm. What was given was kind of a broader scope, and then what was talked about was it goes even beyond that, which was no talking what you could say to the news
And I apologize, I don't have the time for social media like I used to, so I'm completely ignorant about this post. I have not seen it, not aware at all of what you're talking about.
Well, she just read it word for word, and I never gave specific direction. I said, this is an example.
Okay.
So that, you
Well,
know,
since this is what
now
other
you
cities
know.
do, go ahead, Councilmember Harris.
I voted in favor of this and will continue to do so. And the reason that I do so is that I have, fairly extensive experience with our boards and commissions. And I realize that people coming onto one of our boards or commissions receive very little training, very little direction. It's kind of all on the job training. You're kind of thrown into it and then you learn. I think this is an excellent platform to start that training. I think we need training for each of those boards and commissions. As we started the Board on Aging, that's still an issue. Parks and Rec, you're just thrown in and you don't even know where all the parks are. So I think that this is a basis, and I think it would be helpful. And like Mark said, I think that people are coming to these boards and commissions who have not had experience with public service. And it is different than just a committee somewhere. The bar's higher.
As is with us as well. I mean, we get elected with very little guidance, and so that is part of it, is learning. And but I don't know when you say professional conduct. I mean, there are people that that are on boards and commission that flat out say, "I'm a problem and I need to go," and they have a right to say that. I don't want anyone to say, "Hey, you can't," that, as far as decorum and professional conduct, I want them to be able to say that. I want them to be able to stand at that podium and tell me exactly what I'm doing wrong and not be afraid. And so I say that because I want staff to understand our limitations when we say decorum, right? You can come up, you can use your freedom of speech, and I don't want anyone to feel like they're limited. And so are we making sure when that direction was given that staff understands that we're okay with that? Mayor Pro Tem Tobias.
Yes, ma'am. I think maybe a lot of it could be just the wording, establishing standards for professional conduct versus respectful conduct towards public residents and so forth. Because, again, these are volunteers, but they're also appointed by us. We're the elected officials. We're also the ones that get a form of a salary and stipend. So in a way, we have a higher level on that end. These are people who come in, they get interviewed, they are selected, they are chosen, and then they are also then nominated, and they are then appointed. So I think, again, for me, it just goes back to what our boards and commissions policy states as far as, attending meetings on a regular basis, showing respectful conduct towards each other, and of course, obviously, you're going to have somebody that's going to serve on the Parks Board, but then goes back and just trashes everything about it on Facebook, about everything. Oh, I hate steeplechase or this or Waterleaf. It doesn't kind of make it look good on that end. But and then do we use that as well? They have a freedom of speech to say whatever they want, but then there's also that conflict of interest to say, is this person shooting down or saying no to these votes because maybe they just don't like that park, or maybe they want it different? But I would just look at it as a direction for when it comes to the boards to look at what the policy states as far as just the baseline on it, because we want to be able to have them continue to serve. And if we start putting them up to this real high standard to where we're at, maybe it might, deter some people to say, you know what, I don't want to be put in that situation on that end. But everybody's responsible for their own language. Everybody's responsible for their own demeanor. But maybe it's just a matter of putting a specific type of rules in place to please be on your best behavior or things like that in that sense, but not to scold people.
Okay, we're going back to the item.
Okay.
If we want to talk about it,
Yep.
I think if we want to get into
Okay.
details, we're going to have to decide if there's going to be a motion to reconsider to begin with at all.
I would like to make a motion to reconsider the vote of the April 7th City Council meeting to consider directing the city manager to research and return to council with a proposed code of conduct for members serving on city boards, commissions, and advisory bodies that establishes standards for professional conduct, public communication, and engagement with residents, colleagues, staff, and council, including enforcement mechanisms and a process for removal.
I second.
Okay, I have a motion by Councilmember Goza, second by Councilmember Harris. Can I get a roll call vote, please? And what we're voting on is just to
I was
reconsider.
going to say, can we get some clarification on what we're voting on?
Yes, so we're just voting on number 8, which is a reconsider. Do we want to reconsider this, bring it back? We could approve the exact same thing at the end of the day with agenda item 9, but this is just bringing back the reconsideration.
On the discussion part, if you consider bringing it back, then we can clarify even more about what Councilmember Zapata is trying to bring forward, plus if there's anything that we want to take out, correct?
Okay.
Is that what we're doing? Okay.
All right, roll call vote?
Goza,
Yes.
Flores Carroll,
Yes.
McKinney,
Yes.
Zapata,
No.
Medina,
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
Tobias.
Yes.
All right. Item passes 6-1.
We can go back.
Yep, now we're going to go back to agenda item 9. Consider directing the city manager to research and return to council with proposed code of conduct for members serving on city boards, commissions, and advisory bodies that establishes standards for professional conduct, public communication, and engagement with residents, colleagues, staff, and council, including enforcement and mechanisms and a process for removal. Item presenter, Claudia Zapata.
I feel like we put the
I
cart before
didn't-
the horse because we've been talking about it the last
Yeah.
15, 20 minutes.
I think it was just a matter of, go ahead.
Well, also,
Councilman.
I didn't request for this item to be brought back, so I have nothing else to add because I think I've stated and made clear what my position is. And like I said, I didn't request for this. So it was just as a surprise to me to open up the agenda for tonight's meeting to see my name on it. I was like, why is my name on the agenda? I didn't bring this back.
Well, they kind of go,
so
they go
that's-
hand in hand, the reconsideration.
Yes, but I wasn't going to present on it because I think it's very clear. I've stated everything that I could.
Okay, well, Mayor Pro Tem Tobias was absent, so I am kind of grateful that we get to talk about this again because we can get his feedback as well. So does anybody have any questions?
If you don't mind, since I wasn't here, unfortunately, we reconsidered to bring the vote back. And so now it's been brought back, so it's like it's now brought on the table once again. And out of respect for any possible confusion, the way I'm looking at it, and of course, we've had some people come up speaking, is there anything that you, Councilmember Zapata, would like to maybe add to this or to clarify, I guess, because of what you posted on social media, to give more of a clear direction, like you're saying, other cities do these items, maybe add some of that in the verbiage, in the language, because it looks like from Mayor Flores Kell, she kind of agreed to go with that, but then may have said, well, that's not exactly what you're going at. Because again, when we give our city staff direction, they need to know exactly 116% what we're asking from them, because I've been in situations where we're coming up with agenda items and we're just throwing things out there, and I'm looking at her and she's looking at Robert and we're looking at Danielle, and we're like, well, what are we gonna do, What the staff does, and staff's like, I don't know, we're just as confused as you are. Is there anything that you wanted to add to where it would give staff, like you said you had other examples of other cities, would something of the verbiage that you want to recommend to add to that, to where we could get this approved on that end? Do you know?
I think we're making a lot of assumptions about whether or not staff understood. Am I allowed to just ask whether or not Brian understood what we meant
Sure.
at the last vote?
It's been brought back, that's fine.
Yeah, so were you, did you have,
What was your understanding?
What was your understanding and what would be your direction, I guess?
I think my understanding was to look at options that are available, look at other cities that have certain types of rules on these, and bring you back options for you to consider and to show you how you could do that under the law that protected free speech, but also provided some rules of decorum. So those are the things that we thought we were asked to do, and would be. I don't know what those would be from the top of my head, but we certainly could look at those, bring you back some examples, certainly run it through legal counsel and look at how it can be done the right way legally, but then bring that back to you. That's what we understood.
Okay.
And that was exactly my intent.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you. I do have a question. So things I heard is options. You're going to bring back options. And so my questions would be options for what? And then you also stated to do that. But I don't know what that is. The only word that I really understood was First Amendment. And so I guess clarification for that. When you say bring back options, I guess I don't really understand what that's for. For me, you know, when you talk about code of conduct, that makes me nervous. And so when you guys talk about options for code of conduct, I just want to make sure that we're on the same page as far as limiting that scope only to their official capacity, I guess I would say. But that would confuse me too, because I don't know any board or commissioner that has an official page. And so if we say, hey, bring back a code of conduct for our boards and commissioners, and you say, okay, we're going to bring back options, I think that's very vague and that's very broad.
Well, I don't
I'm
think
talking
it's,
Brian.
the
Could you please
agenda
answer that?
item itself says standards, so that's what the options would be the standards for those given things. That's what it's referring to.
Okay, thank you. Brian, I'm sorry. Could I have you answer the question that I posed to you?
Yeah, I think the intent is to look at other examples of policies that have been put in place like this. This is, I think, as Councilmember Zapata had mentioned, there's a number of cities that have them. What are the variations that they have in those policies, and what are the options that you have as a policy-making board to decide how you want to draft these? That's what we're referring to. I can't sit here today to tell you what those different options would be because I don't know, but that's what the research we would do, and then to bring that back to you and let you make the decision of what level of policy did you want to have, what areas would you be comfortable with, what areas would you not be comfortable with, and what are the restrictions by law that you have to operate under. That would be the type of report we would bring back to you. So that's what I'd understood, but again, we're here to take whatever direction you have for us. If that's not what you want us to do, please indicate what it is that you'd like us to do.
Okay, that is fair. But for example, Councilmember McKinney was like worst case scenario for removal. So I just don't want you guys working on something where it's like you give us 3 options of removal if some of us expected it to be worst case scenario. Is that helpful?
So one thing I will note is the current code provides that council can remove board members with or without cause. So that's already there.
Okay,
So
perfect.
Worst case scenario, if you want us to change that, we're gonna have to change that in the code. If you want to make it only with cause, we need to change that in the code.
Okay. So then do we even need to leave that in there?
I think those are options, right? The option is, do you want to be able to continue to remove board members without cause? Do we want to put rules around when board members can be removed? Those are options that we would bring forward on this is what other cities do. But it may not be as simple as a policy discussion. Depending on what you decide to do, it may be changes to the city code.
Councilmember Goza.
I guess I have some concerns as well with looking at other cities, because as I went through looking at a lot of this information that was online, it talked about how a lot of cities really focus on, the decorum rules, and even though they have them in place, does not necessarily mean that they are legal. And so we're seeing a lot of challenges right now from councils who take somebody off of the podium because they didn't like what they had to say, and they're like, I have the right to remove you under rules of decorum. You had a situation where you were within your right to say something last year, and you were removed under rules of decorum that say no personal attacks. And what you said was not a personal attack, and you can't prevent that under the First Amendment. So that's where I have some real concerns in imposing standards, because unless they are very, very narrowly mapped out, then we run a risk of, infringing on the members' rights. And I do think it will be a deterrent for our board members and our volunteers. Just kind of another point of entry that, I have to adhere to this. I had a board member who was real snippy with me when I was running for council. And I would never want to put a rule in that said that she couldn't do that, because I think that speech is very important.
Any other questions, concerns, motions, comments? Councilmember McKinney?
I still think it's important to have some kind of a playbook for them to go off of, and some framework, and just kind of to set basic expectations. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think any of us disagree on that.
Well, it would be helpful to know what we already have, because there are.
I feel like that should be part of what they bring
plans and
back as well. Is
policies.
like,
Okay.
hey, this option A is you do nothing. This is what we have.
That's what we have, okay.
And then
That's fair.
options B through
I think you're
triple
aware, Mayor,
F.
that the current rules of council say that when a council member brings an item, staff is not supposed to go do the research prior to the vote of council. So we haven't done that. That will be the first step in bringing you options. This is
Okay.
what you currently have. How do you want to change that?
Okay. I think that's where the memos fall in place too, the backup materials.
So if we make a motion to do it, like you said, it would just be a matter of the language of what we're going, like saying, not saying we're not trying to not support it, but we are in a sense, correct? But it's a matter of getting clarification, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So would you have any consideration as far as language to add? Like the.
I'm hesitant to pigeonhole too early until
Yeah.
I've seen what.
Well, maybe we
options
add
are.
something.
There might be something that gets presented and like, oh my goodness, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah.
And I
Maybe
don't
we
want
can-
to
What do we do?
avoid that scenario.
Can we prohibit any other cities accepting or presenting any other cities that would impede on our First Amendment rights?
I can do is assure you, Mayor, that I will include an executive session to discuss First Amendment issues on the meeting where we bring this back. And we can go through how the First Amendment is handled. I will also review these items before they get to you and include in that presentation anything I think might impact the First Amendment.
Yeah, we're fundamentally against restricting First Amendment rights.
Well,
That's-
unfortunately, our rules currently do violate that. And so, that, like Councilmember Goza said, just because another city does it, doesn't mean it doesn't infringe. And so my ask would be, can we make sure whatever we bring back for consideration just because another city's doing it, doesn't make it right? Can we make sure we don't bring that kind of information back to us for consideration?
I agree. We can bring rules that other cities have. We can make notes on which things might be a concern. And again, we can post an executive session so that we can go through all of those in detail and discuss risks and what we think is or is not acceptable under the First Amendment.
Councilmember Medina?
Just a question on the possibility of rewording the actual item to maybe add in, consider directing the city manager to bring back current code of conduct and research and return with updated proposed code of conduct. That way it clearly says we want to know what's currently in place and see what could be amended.
I would have a hard time supporting the second part of that because, like I said before, I don't want staff making the judgment call of what gets decided on. And I think that's what that direction would give them. I would like to see the most amount of options and let us pick and choose what we like and don't like. But that's my thoughts.
Can we accept a friendly amendment that kind of, I think, goes between both of that, which is consider directing the city manager to research the current rules, codes of conduct, and processes in place for boards, commissions, committees, et cetera, and return to council with the proposed code of conduct for members serving on city boards, commissions, and advisory bodies that establishes standards for professional conduct, public communication, and the rest of the item. So that we ensure that the first thing discussed and presented to us is what our current policies are, so that way we can immediately see what the options are in comparison to that.
Clarity, is that options for potential language that could be made a code of conduct, or do you want an actual written out code of conduct brought back?
It'd be options.
So it'd be a presentation with options.
Yes.
Would you like to make that a motion? Do you need her to restate all that? Can she just make a motion for what she
No,
said?
I think she made that motion. And I'm just going to repeat it and tell me if I'm wrong. Motion directing the city manager to bring back, or to do the research and bring back the existing rules of conduct and policies that apply to boards, commissions, and committees, and to provide a presentation on potential options for changes or other considerations for codes of conduct for the boards, commissions, and committees, and then including professional conduct and that sort of, is it professional conduct?
The rest of it.
Yeah, the
All
rest of the agenda
yeah,
item.
provision.
Are you okay with that? Councilmember Zapata?
Yes.
All right, I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion by Councilmember Zapata and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Tobias. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0.
Good job, guys.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, thank you guys for that. All right, so we're going to go back to presentations. Agenda item number 3, receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff feedback regarding the history of the city's Finance and Audit Committee and possible options for the committee's reinstatement. Item presenter, Perez Mohit.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, for the record, I'm Pervez Mohit, City's Director of Finance. So I have a brief presentation to go over what council requested or directed staff to bring back. I'm going to cover very briefly the City Council's request or direction to the City Manager. I'm going to cover history of City's Audit and Finance Committee, what a typical purpose of an Audit and Finance Committee is all about, and also share with you some of the oversight responsibilities of a typical Audit and Finance Committee, share with you results from the survey of our 10 peer cities, how they govern their Audit and Finance Committee within their cities, and then finally lay out some options for your consideration. And then we look forward to, as staff, your feedback and direction on this topic. So City Council's direction to City Manager on February 3rd, 2026 was as follows. It was under City Council meeting agenda number 23. The approved motion was to direct the City Manager to have the Finance Director present the history of the previous Finance and Audit Committee and bring back options for its reinstatement. So that was the direction given to City Manager. So here's a brief history of an Audit Finance Committee or something similar to it within the City of Kyle governance structure. So in my research, I was able to find something going back to February of 2006. This is the first ever committee I was able to track down. So City Council Resolution 482 that was approved on February 7th, 2006, it named an Audit Finance Committee, and they called it Kyle Committee on Finance and Audit. The resolution approved by City Council established the terms, qualifications, procedures, and duties for the Kyle Committee on Finance and Audit. The purpose was laid out in the resolution. It was to assist the City Council in carrying out its oversight and improvement responsibilities as they relate to the city's financial and performance reporting practices, internal controls, compliance with laws and regulations, and initiatives to improve the performance of city services. The membership was made up of 7, total 7, 6 residents, and the mayor or his or her council member designee. So it was a membership of total of 7, 6 residents, and 1 council person, which was basically the mayor or his or her designee. The term of the committee members was 2 years and concurrent for mayor or the council person appointed as designee. The duties as laid out in the resolution specifically stated to advise the city council and staff on investment policies, to monitor the city funds on a quarterly basis, to review the internal controls and make recommendations to city council if necessary to improve financial controls and related procedures, and to carry out and perform such other advisory or volunteer duties consistent with the city charter and state law as the city council may deem beneficial to the city. So that was all prescribed in Resolution 482 that established this committee for the city on February 7, 2006. So in my research, I was not able to find any records in the city clerk's office, in the finance department, that gave any clue to whether this committee ever met, whether it held any meetings, established any schedules, created any agendas. I could not find any minutes or any outline thereof. I checked with the city secretary and she did not have much luck either. So that was the very first Committee on Finance and Audit in Kyle. Then October 7th, ordinance number 550 created and established a committee called Strategic Planning and Finance Committee. And as compared to the previous committee, this committee was established by an ordinance. The previous committee was established by a city resolution. So the purpose of this committee, as prescribed in the ordinance, was to promote efficient governmental operations and involvement of citizens in community issues. And it further states that this committee shall function in an advisory capacity only to the council and shall have the responsibilities and duties set forth in the ordinance, as well as any other functions and duties assigned by city council. The membership initially was made up of 7 committee members, 6 residents, and 1 city council member. Their term was 2 years, and the duties as outlined in the ordinance was to function, for this committee to function in an advisory capacity to city council, to study and recommend options for strategic planning and goal setting, to assist in coordinating efforts for implementing city goals, to recommend issues for in-depth study by other committees, and to report to City Council on a quarterly basis. So this committee was created on October 7, 2008. Then in September 6th, or on September 6, 2011, the first amendment was approved by council to the ordinance that created or established this committee. This amendment primarily changed the membership from residents and 1 council member to 7 residents of the city. And it repealed the council committee membership. So that was in 2011. Then ordinance number 696, which was approved by council on April 3rd, 2012, further amended the committee makeup. It added a section for the selection of chairperson and vice chairperson and define the main responsibility of the vice chairperson of this committee. And that's all this ordinance did. Then March 19th, 2013, council approved ordinance number 721. This also amended the membership of the committee. It changed the membership from 7 to a total of 9 committee members. 9 residents, or as referred to in this ordinance, they refer to as them as citizen members of the committee. 1 citizen member chosen from each single member district, so that gave us 3. 3 citizen members chosen from the city at large, that gave us an additional 3. 1 chairperson chosen from the city at large, so that now adds up to 7. And then they added 2 alternate members chosen from the city at large. That gave us a total of 9 citizen members on this to serve on this committee. "20 months later, ordinance number 851 was approved by council on June 2nd, 2015. This ordinance abolished the Strategic Planning and Finance Committee. It specifically did the following. This ordinance repealed the original ordinance, number 550, that established the Strategic Planning and Finance Committee in its entirety. It repealed ordinance numbers 672, 696, and 721, which amended certain sections of the original creation ordinance. This ordinance also amended the city's debt management policy, which was separately adopted under Ordinance 648, and it repealed all oversight responsibilities and reference to the city's Strategic Planning and Finance Committee. This ordinance also repealed all other ordinances and any other code that might have been in conflict with this new ordinance. And the last 2 items that this ordinance covered, it basically stated that all duties and responsibilities of the Strategic Planning and Finance Committee will now fall to the City Council. This committee was abolished effective June 2nd, 2015, after being active and in service for 6 years and 8 months. So what happened after the committee was abolished? So post Ordinance 851, the City of Kyle has not had a Finance and Audit Committee or anything in that realm. No Strategic Planning and Finance Committee. In practice, the City Council has assumed most of the duties and responsibilities of this committee. And that is still in effect as of today. So that was basically the history of Audit and Finance Committee. Now let's go over what a typical purpose of an Audit Finance Committee is. The purpose of an Audit Finance Committee in city governments is to assist the City Council in carrying out its fiduciary financial oversight responsibilities. The Audit and Finance Committee serves in an advisory capacity to the City Council. An effective Audit and Finance Committee helps protect and safeguard taxpayer funds. It helps increase public trust in that city or municipality or local government, and it helps improve financial discipline and controls. So what are some of the oversight responsibilities, typical oversight responsibilities of an Audit and Finance Committee? They're not limited to just these that I am showing you or sharing with you. It can be anything and everything that this council or this body may decide to include. But the typical Audit Finance Committee, Their oversight responsibilities span over the following: financial planning and reporting, independent annual financial audit, when that is in progress, they cover that, they oversee that, they review the results and provide any guidance to City Council. They review internal controls, risk management, debt management, investments and investment-related policies, other financial policies of the city or the local government, and they study specific financial matters requested by City Council. So in addition to all these oversight responsibilities, Council may decide to assign a very specific review or study to this committee, and they bring back their results and recommendations to the entire Council. So while we were doing this, or I was doing this, I also looked at our 10 peer cities. These are the same cities that we benchmark with almost on anything we compare ourselves to. So the 10 cities first, I'm going to go over the list first, is City of Austin, Buda, Cedar Park, Georgetown, Leander, New Braunfels, Pflugerville, Round Rock, San Antonio, San Marcos, and of course, City of Kyle. When we looked at the 10 cities, right off the bat, I've highlighted in yellow, there are 3 cities that do not have an audit finance committee or some committee of that type. They're very similar to Kyle, what Kyle is doing today. So City of Cedar Park, City of Leander, and City of Round Rock, they do not have a separate audit finance committee. Their city council has assumed that role, and just like in Kyle. So going down the list, City of Austin has a committee, and they have named it Audit and Finance Committee. The membership is made up of council members. There are 5 council members on it, and their term is 1 year, and they meet on a regular basis. They meet on a monthly basis. City of Buda has a committee. They call it the Audit Committee. It's made up of council members, and there are 3 council members that serve on this committee, and they meet as needed. Georgetown has one, and it's called the Audit and Finance Committee. It's made up of council members. There are 3 council members that serve on this committee, and they meet on as needed basis. City of New Braunfels, they have a committee called Finance and Audit Committee. So you'll see the name flipping Finance and Audit or Audit and Finance, but it's the same thing. They're made up in New Braunfels of council members, and they have 3 council members that serve on it. And their term is limited to 3 years, and they meet on a quarterly basis. City of Pflugerville have a committee, it's called Finance and Budget, and it's made entirely of residents or citizens. They have 5 citizens that serve on it, and their term is for 1 year, and they meet on an as needed basis. City of San Antonio, they have a committee called Audit Committee. It's made up of council members and citizens. The membership is a total of 6. They have 4 council members and 2 citizens that serve on this committee, and their term is for 2 years, and they meet just like Austin on a regular basis, which is monthly. City of San Marcos has one. It's called Finance and Audit Committee. It's made up of council and staff. They said it's made up of council and staff, but the staff does not have any voting powers. So it's really made up of 3 council members with 5 staff that support this committee. Their term is limited to 3 years, and they meet on a quarterly basis. So that's the survey results of what we found our peer cities to be doing as part of their governance for their Audit and Finance Committee. So council's direction to city manager was to bring back options for reinstatement of city's Audit and Finance Committee if the council so chooses to do. So these are 3 sample options I am not recommending any one of these. It's up to this council how y'all want to set this committee up. So a possible option could be is created by a city council ordinance. Name could be Audit and Finance Committee. Membership structure could be made up of council members. Number of members could be determined by city council. Term could be 3 years or any other term council may choose. And the frequency of meetings could be on an as-needed basis. I cannot see an Audit Finance Committee unless we have a full agenda and assignments from council to meet on a monthly basis in Kyle. Another sample of committee makeup could be, same thing, established by a city ordinance, titled Audit and Finance Committee, and could be council members and residents. So it's a hybrid of some sort. Number of members here again could be determined by city council. Term could be as long as 3 years, and same thing on the meeting frequency on an as-needed basis. And this is my favorite option. So under option 3 is whatever y'all wish to and like to make this committee to be. If you want to have a committee, that's 1. 2, what the committee's makeup is going to be, who they will be representing, how it'll be set up, how frequently they meet. And then we would like to get your feedback and direction as to the next steps.
All right, thank you. As always, Perez, you did a great job. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Councilmember Harris.
We use a number of outside contractors for our audit and our bonds and advice related to risk management. Would you go over some of those that we already are using outside of the finance department?
Sure. So we have the independent auditors that examine our financial statements every year at the end of the year. We have financial advisor. Samco Capital is currently the city's financial advisor. They advise staff and council on financing matters. These could be bonds, these could be leases, these could be tax rate analysis. We've asked them to do tax rate analysis in the past, but it's primarily financing activities and transactions that come before council. We have bond counsel that advises the city staff and city council on debt-related matters, whether they are city's debt, whether they are conduit debt, meaning bonds that are issued by PITS, but they are under our name. They advise the city on other financing transactions that relate to, at the end of the day, will be debt issued. So that's the bond counsel's role. We also have investment advisor that helps us select and comply with state law on investment transactions. So whenever we have monies in the bank that we know we're not going to use for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 3 months out, we invest those funds in different products that are allowed, investment products that are allowed under state law. They're very tightly regulated what we can invest or cannot invest. So we have a financial advisor, investment advisor, that provides that service to staff. And based on that, we have developed our investment policy that council reviews every year in September. And if there are any updates, council reviews those updates. If there are any changes, council reviews and approves those changes. Those are the main key financial advisors and consultants that we have on board that advise us regularly.
And our audit firm is changed every 5 years?
That's correct. That's correct.
And it isn't just one person doing the audit, they bring a whole team?
That's correct. So the city charter requires that the city rotate its independent auditors every 5 years. And it's not one person, they bring a team, and they look at financial audits and internal controls.
Could you expand on internal controls and what that means?
Sure. So there are two types of internal controls. One is administrative internal controls, and I'll go over that briefly. The other is financial or accounting internal controls. Administrative internal controls, a good example would be timekeeping, hiring new employees, how they're added to the payroll system. Administrative controls could also include just what we're doing here, the city's administrative process for getting council's approval on contracts, on financial transactions, on anything related to that would result in city's commitment or financial obligation at the end of that transaction. Those are administrative type controls. How contracts are reviewed, how they are developed, those are administrative controls before it comes before council for approval. Financial controls, on the other hand, they are strictly financial related. How do you process payroll? How do you protect from ghost employees getting through in the payroll system? How do you protect from city's bank account being fraudulent transactions going through the city's bank accounts, operating bank accounts? We have several bank accounts, investment bank accounts. Controls how the city does wire transfers, for example, outgoing wire transfers, incoming wire transfers, automatic checklist payments that we process. There are controls related to that. I don't want to advertise those controls on national TV, but there are controls associated with that. So I don't know if that answers.
It does. I just want to make sure that I get a good understanding because when I talked to the audit, it was more like a snapshot and then policies. So it wasn't like they pulled something for every month, or it was just like the end of year statements and then ensuring that the policies that we create within our city are being followed.
So the financial audit is as of year end. So it is correct. It's a snapshot of year end for the entire fiscal year. In our case, is as of September 30th of each fiscal year. The financial audit does not examine 100% of transactions, and I think I've shared that with y'all when we talked about the audit. They base it on samples or tests, and those samples of transactions are selected. They look at the internal controls first. How good are the city's internal controls? And in their assessment, if they find areas of weakness or some concern, they will keep expanding their sample size of selecting those transactions to satisfy themselves that, yes, city is complying with rules and regulations, standards, accounting standards, state law, all of those things they check for. So even though it's based on sample or testing, the sample size increases if they deem that the internal controls might need improvement or they're weak or their comfort level is not there.
Mayor Pro Tem Tobias? Oh, wait, and at one point I got to get back to Melissa.
You're good.
Councilmember Medina, sorry.
You're good.
Sorry.
Regards to the Audits and Finance Committee, could you kind of speak on if there's a current specific gap that we would be trying to fill if we brought this committee back?
I'm trying to understand that question. I'm sorry.
Like, is there a current gap? Is there something particularly missing in what council is doing that bringing this committee would fill?
it would add another set of eyes, independent eyes from council before we come to you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say I'm presenting the audit report with the auditor in tow. We go over the audit process, we explain what financial statements audit covers, but we don't go into as in-depth with council.
Right.
You see the final product, you see the final report, you see the final recommendations from the auditor. If we had an audit finance committee, they would be involved in the audit process. We would be taking, staff would be taking at critical milestones to get their feedback.
Okay.
And at the end, they would be providing recommendations to council.
And with that recommendations, that's kind of advisory only and not like formal, like a formal role of recommendations?
That is correct. It would be strictly advisory.
Okay. And then if we were to mix in residents on the committee like two of our peer cities do, would you suggest any kind of certain qualifications, like a finance background or any other professional qualifications for those residents to have to be on the committee?
It would be helpful if they had some financial or accounting background, but not all 7 or all 5 need to be financial experts.
Maybe a mix.
Yeah, a mixed number of professionals, attorneys, financial, insurance people.
Okay. And is there a certain capacity that they would interact with staff or mostly with council?
They will be interacting with staff. So when we did have that strategic planning committee, even though they were required to meet at least minimum quarterly, we met. I was the staff that supported that committee.
Okay.
We met on a regular basis whenever we had key financial items coming before council. We would get their review and recommendation to council independently of staff.
Okay.
And we would also go over policies, any changes to policies, especially debt management policy. They had a very key role in that when the first debt management policy was established.
And the early onset committee, you said, didn't have any meeting minutes that you could find. Are there meeting minutes or agendas from the later committees with the later ordinances?
The strategic finance committee was not, in those days, was not formally put on agendas.
Okay.
We did not have anyone from the city secretary's office taking minutes. So I, as the staff liaison or the staff support, I did the agenda. I sent emails to the committee members where the meeting is going to be, what is going to be on the agenda. I ran a tape recorder to take minutes, and I would translate that at the end into minutes.
Okay.
But it was not posted anywhere.
Would the future committee, if it came back, be open meetings for?
Yes, so it would be, if the council goes in that direction, it would be set up just like any other board and commission.
And since you were involved with the committee, is there certain reasons why it was originally dissolved, or if there were challenges or concerns that existed to have it be dissolved?
I had my personal reasons, but I don't know really what actually transpired that resulted in that ordinance.
Okay. Yeah, just questioning, because if we did bring it back, we'd want to know what needed to be done differently this time to make it functional, make it work, and not repeat any of the same issues. So I'm open to the idea. I just want to make sure it's clearly defined and effective and beneficial for both residents, council, and staff. But that's all my questions.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Tobias?
That was kind of the question that I had in 2015. Anybody know why it was dismantled? But of course, we don't have any record of that on that end. Now it just automatically got moved to council. With the air, with everything in the air as far as our finances and where we're at and where our economy is nationwide and statewide and locally, it would be a good suggestion to maybe look at bringing a committee, something like this back, because I did some research. And I sent something to you and Courtney the other day about, how cities are trying to get out of debt and trying to look at investing in their finances. So to me, looking at it, I would support an item like this, going with option 2. Because even though we do have our internal auditors that we are required to hire to help us in that area, I would support a 7-person committee based with residents that would have maybe some experience in banking or financing. If not, then it's okay. We can get anybody that would like to apply. A 3-year term to where they could be able to hold with the current council member, because you'd have a 5-person plus 2 council members, and it would be a 3-year term. And I would recommend quarterly meetings, even though you may not have something, because that way at the end of our cycle, at the end of our year, we're not getting, we do get like, here's where our finances are, here's where our numbers are at. If we do it quarterly, let's say, I've already wrote it down, October, because right off the bat, we just signed off on our new budget. This is our starting point, okay? This is first quarter, of a football game. This is what the score's at. This is where we're at right now, what we voted on. This is what our starting gate's gonna be. Move into second quarter, which would be around the end of March, April, as we start gearing up to see where our finances are, to see where our money's at, to see how our bonds are looking, to see if we're on track financially. Because by then, whatever council is there, they're having projects that are coming through. We have CIP projects that are en route, that are in the process of being conducted. We can get an amount of like checking our bank account to see where we're at. By the time it reaches June, we're already in our 2nd to 3rd workshops, correct? So we already have an idea of when our first May meeting comes, right? We know exactly what the city is asking from us. They're presenting their Sears Christmas list book, their wish list. We can kind of see what they're asking, what they're looking at. And by June, we can kind of see where our finances are there. It's a matter of keeping track on that end. And then at the very end, right before we vote on our budget, because we used to do in August, now we do in September, we can get a final report from the committee could get a final report as far as all the audits that were done, all the internal audits that we had, and we can have so much conversation about what it is. We can have public comment to see where we're at. And I think it would be even better to have something like that because you have residents involved. They can have a say, and also it's that checks and balances. But like you said, you nailed it. The more eyes and the more ears and the more we can study where our money is. If we start getting locally, as our economy is getting kind of tapered off, because I remember a year ago you said our honeymoon phase is going to be tapering off. A lot of our development is going to start slowing down. We are starting to see that now. We can kind of see where our money's at, and it helps us budget to where we have another set of eyes. A committee can say, hey, this is what we're recommending to council, or this is what we advise the council moving forward, versus just having the audit committee coming straight to us. It's just that middleman that we have in the middle, and it's based on residents who want to be part of that process, and then 2 council members that could be able to help with the lead on that. And then, of course, you'll always be there to help with the city managers or whoever we have could be able to help guide us through. I think it'd be helpful, but I would recommend those options there. I yield.
Councilmember McKinney?
I think that if we're going to have residents on, and if we're going to defer our responsibilities off on them, they need to have qualifications. They need to have some kind of a license. They need to have some expertise. And not just anybody. I think this, if we decide to go this route, it is entirely too important to just put in the hands of whomever. I think they need to have, significantly more knowledge than we do as we come in, if we're going to go that route.
That's true.
Pervez, I value your opinion highly, and I'm trying to think of the appropriate way to phrase this question, and it's not going to come out right. I'm going to ask it anyway. Would this committee help or hinder you in the work that you do for the city?
It depends on the makeup of the committee and the mission established by council. Most likely it will help.
Okay.
And the qualifications of the membership.
That was the answer I was looking for.
Yeah, that could be part of the application process, like you said, And there's somebody on council that's good with numbers as well. I mean,
Yeah, I've held a Series 7 license.
That would be somebody that would be interested in that situation.
Done a lot.
All right, I want to preface the fact that this is in addition to me looking at the finances. I don't think we're going to just give up our responsibilities as oversight. This is going to be in addition to, and we had a committee up 2 years ago, and it was Councilmember Goza. She was a one-man committee. I'm just kidding. But I do appreciate the fact that she was, as a resident, so willing to dig in and look at the finances. And I think if we decide to go with this option, it'll give residents an opportunity to ask questions. And so maybe it's not so many assumptions flying around. My idea would be to do a finance and a budget. And I say budget because I would love that feedback from the residents in this committee on how they think that we should spend their taxpayer dollars. And again, they're just a recommendation, so not just, but we're not taking those words as solid. So we can still choose and decide how we want to see that. But many of us go to social media and go to different places to obtain this information, and it would be fantastic if we had a committee that could share that information with us. I think I like the idea of meeting quarterly, except for during the right before budget, if they could meet a little bit more so they can give us recommendations for budget. I don't know how everybody feels about including the budget aspect of it, but to me that's important. It's important to get the taxpayer feedback on how they want their money spent. Is this, I don't know if this is asking too much, Perez, because I know some history of the city of Kyle, and my question to you would be, when you walked into your position, for one, did you have concerns? And for two, could you share any of those concerns with us? You were brought on for a very specific reason. I know that.
When I walked in, and what I found that I was given responsibility for, I almost walked back out.
Funny, not funny, but yes.
No, it is true.
I believe it.
And I'll give you a very simple example. There were funds that I found when I first came on board were in negative position. Not by $100 or $1,000. They were negative in millions. What I found in researching, in those days, staff was giving council budget information that council was adopting budget without knowing the fund balance. So that added to the negative position in many of the city funds. It took me over 5 years to bring those fund balances back to normal. So when I look back when I first started to where we are today, it's a day and night difference. So I don't know if...
No, I appreciate that. And let me tell you
But
why
I also made a promise to council. I stood in front of council the day I was introduced to council. And I believe I've kept that promise to this day. The promise was very simple. You may not like what I have to say, but it will be the truth. Because if you don't know the truth, how as public officials do you make right decisions.
I appreciate that. And the reason why I asked, I've been very active in the history of the city of Kyle, and so I'm aware of some of these things. But, you know, a lot of people, Councilmember Harris just said, well, we do this and we do this. Well, they were doing it back then too. But it can happen, and it may not currently be happening.
They were. They were not doing.
We had this
all
committee
those
then too.
things.
Like,
But my whole point is, when people question how do these things happen, they do. They do. You walked into a position where millions of dollars of missing. That was how many years ago? Like 15,
It wasn't
20 years?
missing, it's just overspent.
Okay.
Without
There you go.
council knowing
Overspent, yes.
it was overspent.
So that's my concern is, yes, I'm not saying this is happening, but I'm saying it did happen. And I prefer to be proactive as opposed to reactive. Yeah, it's our job, as we all sit here, to ensure that we're protecting our taxpayer dollars. And I think our city's done a fairly good job of doing that. And so I want to keep doing that moving forward. So my only suggestion would be we make it finance and budget, if council's okay with that, just to obtain that additional feedback during budget season. And I do like the idea of having somebody with a finance background of some sort on board. I know they might also be limited. I don't know if they can, like, FINRA kind of regulates the advice that you can give or the feedback that you can give. So just, you know, if we do decide to come back with that, keeping that in mind.
Sure.
Okay, Councilmember Zapata?
I appreciate all the work that you do, and also for just standing so firmly on, you know, just being honest and always telling the truth. And I think that's why, like, I find it so difficult sometimes when folks try to, you know, rip down the work that you have dedicated yourself to doing and bringing us out of what that was. Can you just remind folks of, like, when it was that you started here?
October 25th, 2010.
And so I think one of my first, I guess I don't feel comfortable making it the Finance and Budget Committee. I would prefer to keep it the Finance and Audit Committee. The reason being is that I would just rather us improve our budget process point blank to allow more feedback from all citizens, because depending on how it's determined whether that's I just think that there could be opportunities for biases, regardless of, like, who's sitting here, on who gets to make a say and who gets to make recommendations about budget-related items. And to me, that doesn't fall within the realm of responsibilities of appointed individuals who are going to be chosen from a group of people who have their own biases. I would just rather us improve the budget process overall. I also think that if we do have it, I would like to see a 4-3. So 4 council, 3 citizen. So that way it's a little bit more balanced. And also maybe give the opportunity for, out of those 3 positions, 2 of those being professionals and then 1 just a resident.
I
that
think we have
wouldn't
to have
need
at most 3 just to
Yeah.
avoid quorum.
Can't have a quorum.
I was going to suggest, if we're going to have majority council, that it be 3-2, so that it's 5 total, 3 council, 2 non, so that we're not having a quorum of council present at the meeting.
Okay. I'd like to see it mostly residents. I'm not. We already have a say as a council member. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
So when it comes to the makeup, I just really want to make sure that whoever it is that we have is going to have that professional background. And I think that seems to be something that we're all on board with. But I really don't feel comfortable with making it the finance and budget. I would rather keep it as finance and audit for the reasons that I stated. And I think meeting quarterly is great. And if they need to speed up the times that they meet during the budget process, I think that's great as well. But I just really, I'm a little hesitant on moving forward with the budget portion of that.
All right, anybody else? Councilmember Goza?
When earlier this year we were voting on bringing in committees, most of council seemed to be against it because of concerns from the citizens about transparency, having to keep up with another board or committee. So, one, I just kind of want to make sure that we're mindful of that. But 2, Perez, what really keeps you awake at night worrying about this job?
Oh, about the job. There are a number of things, but on the short list would be our debt, our CIP spending plan, which the debt is a byproduct of the CIP spending plan, and the pressure it puts on tax rates, water rates, wastewater rates. So the rates are at the top of the pyramid, and anything below that. Of my concern, what keeps me up is the debt and the CIP spending plan.
Okay, so are those things that you would then want the commission to take a particular look at as we form this?
So we have to be very careful. The city charter kind of specifies the budget process. So the budget doesn't become official until the city manager proposes to city council, which is 60 days prior to the start of the fiscal year. So once the proposed budget is official and is public in the public domain, if we were to have this committee, we could have the committee examine or study, if the council chose that to be their mission, any tax rate impacts, any recommendations on tax rates, any proposal by staff or city manager to change up or down water or utility rates. The impact of that could be looked at by the committee, by the residents or council members, whoever serves on this committee, and makes their recommendation directly to council, not to city manager or staff. So I foresee that to be their role, and not examining every line item in the budget, just the big ticket items that really impact the checkbooks of our households in our community.
The other note I'm going to make is the charter currently provides some responsibility to the Planning and Zoning Commission to review capital improvement programs. So if we're going to include that as part of this, we need to make sure that it's consistent.
Okay.
I can't remember a time I've seen them do that.
Yeah, it's in the charter. I don't recall the last time they've done it either, but.
We have taken the CIP plan to the P&Z when we update the impact fee for water and wastewater.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Perez.
Any other questions, comments? Did we give enough feedback for you to bring this back?
Sure. So I've gotten a number of variations. So
It's just presentation.
I'm going to bring back a draft ordinance with these options that we talked about. Mayor had options, Mayor Pro Tem had options, Council Member Zapata had options. They're slightly different from each other. So what I bring back, I'm going to bring back all y'all's option, and then you as a body help us decide which way y'all want to go.
All right, thank you.
Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to make sure we gave you clear direction.
Thank you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Next, we have agenda item 4, receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff feedback on the progress of the Unified Development Code and Engineering Criteria Manual, including project schedule, draft modules, and public engagement strategy conducted by Freeze and Nichols for the City of Kyle. Item presenter, Rosie Truelove.
Hello, good evening. So we're here today to talk a little bit about what we're going to see going forward with the creation and eventual adoption of a new Unified Development Code. So let's see if this will work for me, maybe. No? No? Next slide, please. Magic in the back. Because the clicker's not working. Okay, there we go. So on February 4th of 2025, Council selected Freese and Nichols to lead the development of a new Unified Development Code and Engineering Criteria Manual. This is a key implementation action associated with the adoption of the 2030 Comprehensive Plan. The UDC will consolidate and modernize the city's zoning, subdivision, and site development regulations into a more user-friendly integrated and legally defensible framework. This project has progressed from diagnostic into active drafting and refinement of the new code. So what we've done and where we are, we've done the diagnostic, a comprehensive diagnostic that came to council, I want to say in December of this past year, of the city's existing development regulations and development processes. We have conducted extensive stakeholder engagement, including meeting with city staff, Planning and Zoning Commission, Economic Development Board, the development community, and local stakeholders. Right now, we're transitioning into a rolling drafting process. We've got the first module completed that staff it's been delivered by our consultant, and staff is reviewing it and providing comments. Module 2 is drafted and under review, and modules 3 and 4 are upcoming. So we're transitioning now to really focus on refining our draft modules and coordinating across the departments, and then expanding public engagement for the next couple of months. I'm going to invite Chance Sparks with Freese Nichols to come and walk through just in a little bit more detail where we're at, where we're going, so that you guys can get a better understanding of what you can expect to see over the next couple months, and then really over the duration of the project.
All right, great. Thank you, Robin. Excited to be here this evening to walk through this with y'all for what to expect going forward. All right, look, clicker's working now. Got that going for us. All right, so again, just provide an update kind of where we are, where we're headed with this. A couple of things that we found along the way as we went through the diagnostic process, then shifted into module drafting, is we do some early testing with that to see how does the staff in particular respond to organizational structure. Learned a couple of things out of that allowed us to reorganize the table of contents that we were going with for this code in a way that kind of works with how things function the Kyle way. Every city is a little bit different. It has to do with how your utilities operate, to your typical development process and patterns, to your staffing levels. So we made some adjustments to that. We also adjusted into what we call a rolling draft format. What that means is that instead of doing discrete modules, with each module, we're adding to what was already drafted with each case and making adjustments to what was previously drafted based on response and comment. That was something that we found worked a little bit better for your staff, helped them understand context to each step along the way. We also, through that, have developed some public engagement approaches. Key thing we always talk about with engagement: convenient, inclusive, interactive, meaningful. I will not do a presentation that involves community engagement that doesn't mention those 4 things. We had some engagement early in the process in the diagnostic. That's figuring out what's broken. That engagement shifts as we move into the drafting process. Development codes are a really challenging thing to do public engagement on because by their nature, they are very technical. So you have to find ways to engage in ways that people can relate to it. And the way I like to explain that is not asking them about how do you feel about this particular setback, or what's the exact right building height. It's asking instead, how are they experiencing place? How do they experience development within Kyle or elsewhere? What are the things that they see that they would like to see in Kyle, or conversely that they do not want to see in Kyle? And we use that experiential approach with the public to interpret that and determine, okay, based on what we're hearing, here's what we need to code for. So that diagnostic process, a lot of that was community education. Here's what's going on, here's what a code does, here's what a code does not do in some cases. So now we're shifting into how we approach engagement during drafting process. So that begins with virtual engagement. We recognize people are generally very busy. Virtual engagement allows them to do it kind of on their own time. That's especially true of a city like Kyle, where many people are dual income families. They often have commutes, things like that. And they're also often tied up with other life priorities. So we try to adjust to that so that they can do it on their own time. The example I often give is, if you're sitting there cruising on your phone during T-ball practice, you might as well do some survey response for something like this. So again, following up with internal, external stakeholder meetings, that's bringing back folks that we've talked to test ideas. We heard what you said during the diagnostic. Here's an idea we have. What do y'all think? How can we refine this further? We'll also have some engagement, in-person engagement events. This is often going where people already are. In the case of tabling events, Also some open houses planned as we move forward. Do have this itemized out for kind of everything that we have done to date, but probably more importantly is what are we doing next? So we're looking at launching a project website. We actually have it drafted, ready to go. It's a matter of clicking a button at this point. We're going to have some specific engineering stakeholder meetings, Planning and Zoning Commission update planned for actually about a month from now. Some follow-up with your economic development and parks boards and commissions. And then some follow-up with y'all kind of in that mid to late July timeframe to have a really good solid check-in. We'll have a lot of drafting done. We're going to want some response from you in terms of some of the direction that we're heading towards. Make sure that we are on the right path before we start buttoning things up and preparing for a more robust public engagement effort. We've got some open houses that are planned going after the first of the year. Basically between the summer and there, it is head down, pencils grinding to develop a code, get it to a point where we feel that it is something that can be presented to and understood by the public, and also allows us to determine how best to message things with the public to make it connectable and understandable and relatable through that. Game plan being a consideration and adoption period in that early 2027 timeframe as we move forward. So major highlights, got the website going up. It's multilingual. Basically, it's got a drop down. You can pick from a litany of different languages, not just English and Spanish. Works pretty well. My favorite one is always tested on Mandarin. It's a very difficult translation effort. We've got somebody in our office that speaks Mandarin. They double check that, and that tells us a good level set on how is this translation happening for other languages. It has some overview, key dates, resources, documentation. Has an interactive map. I really like that because it allows people to drop pins and say what they like, what they don't like, things like that. Some simple question polling. And also, but really importantly, a project contact form. That's something that's really useful for the public just to send in like, hey, I've got this thought. I need to dump it out of my brain. Here it is. Or conversely, for y'all, it's a constituent called me up. They had this question, this thought. It gives y'all a really easy avenue to send something directly into this process. About every week or 2 weeks, we're going to pull those, summarize them, maybe put together some response summaries, get those posted up too. Basically shifting to a heavily transparent drafting process, heavily transparent feedback process. Doesn't mean you have to take every comment and automatically say, yes, we're going to put that in the code. But you have everybody a response. To, yes, we heard you, it actually fits in this area, we haven't drafted that yet, or, hey, we heard you, we heard this is a conflicting issue that we've also heard, here's where we sit on this, and this is going to become a policy conversation. But giving those people that respect the feedback loop on that. So again, Module 1, this was your general provisions, this is a lot of the legal basis framework, and gets into your applications and permits. Module 2 carries that over into some subdivision layout. This is where you look at things like how does traffic get assessed and analyzed? How do you determine adequate public facilities for water, wastewater, things like that? How do you simply lay out a new subdivision? What's required? What needs to be shown? All that type of information appears in that Module 2. Where we're heading next is Module 3. This is where things get a little more exciting. You start hitting the zoning language. That's where you see lots of zoning district consolidations. You have a lot of districts that are not significantly used, so we're consolidating some of those. We're creating some specific standards particular to your downtown. The needs of your downtown, the development issues of your downtown are substantially different from the rest of your city. So it's creating a set of standards that is pretty comprehensive that addresses everything in one spot in the downtown. Residential development, non-residential, getting into how you do everything from landscaping to parking layouts, things like that. And then Module 4 wraps up a lot of the remaining stuff, and then the details that cross over between different areas. Tree preservation being one of those, lighting, sign regulations, things like that. From there it goes into a consolidation. We make sure everything is speaking to itself the way it should, as a unified code should. We start testing that with staff, then we shift to testing it with stakeholders. We feel good about that. We say, all right, let's take this thing out to the public. So that's kind of the game plan here. This QR code will work. It does not work right now because we have not hit the activate button on the website, but mainly because people might be watching this in the future, letting them know if they hold their camera up to this, it will flip over into a website here in about a week. So that's a quick orientation to where we are. Would love to answer any questions. Of course, Rosie and Melissa are both here too.
Would you, one of the things I was impressed with were some of the consulting groups that you were using to work with you for the development code. Would you give us a few examples of that?
Of the what?
The groups, the other groups that are working with you
other
as
team
advisors?
members? Our teaming, our partners. So we're working with Livable Plans and Codes. It's Jane Ariana, has a unique expertise, particularly in form-based codes. But are you talking about like individual team members?
No, a number of organizations that you're working with.
Sure,
outside,
yes.
Outside of Freeze and Nichols.
And then also you're doing the Hayes County.
Oh, okay, yes. So yes, we're also working with Hayes County on their development regulations. Those have gotten more exciting here recently. But we're also working with several other cities, Georgetown, we worked with Hutto, we're working with Liberty Hill. But we're also working with some larger cities. We're working with Plano, for example. That's a really interesting city where they are a fully built out city and have to convert their code from where they were always presuming that they were developing empty land to now everything in Plano is redevelopment. Requires a completely different set of skills, completely different set of standards. So those are a few of the examples that we're working with.
That's of cities, but what about organizations you're working with?
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, stakeholder groups. So yes, so we're working with some of the conservation groups. We've met with a large number of developer interests in there. We had I'm trying to remember all the environmental groups that were in that conversation.
Yeah, but you're doing some work with some other environmental groups with the state too.
Oh, with the state. Oh, you're talking about like with the GLO.
Yeah.
Oh, we worked with GLO, Ducks Unlimited. We worked with Surfrider. A few others like that. I don't know if that answers your question. I have a hard time remembering who we work with and where. But
All right, any other questions, comments, feedback? Go ahead, Councilmember Zapata.
So back in December, and you probably know where this is going, I had brought up the concern with ensuring that we're talking about anti-displacement and that we're addressing it within our code. Can I just get like a little bit of an update on like how that's been going, things that we've considered, if we've already drafted some items, it seems? Do you have, yeah.
Sure,
It can be short. It doesn't have to be in depth or anything.
Sure. So that's actually part of the module that we're looking at now, because your anti-displacement types of topics tend to fall squarely in the zoning arena, where it does touch development code. When you're talking about anti-displacement, it gets beyond like regulation, like development regulations. There's a whole lot of things that influence it. But within the development regulation space, what we are focusing on is how do you support incremental change? That's the key to addressing kind of that anti-displacement issue. When you have a code that either results in putting things kind of under a glass dome where they never change, or transformative change, that's what tends to cause that displacement, because then you end up with large-scale projects that kind of are disruptive. Example I would use for where you've seen that play out kind of in real time would be kind of the East Austin area, where you had some code issues that kept things constrained. What that led to was really large-scale projects, and next thing you know, the little house that ended up next door to the 7-story thing had their taxes shoot up, and then they got bumped out, often because they were renting, didn't have homestead exemption, things like that. Rents went up, and that's how that story ends on that. So we're trying to be mindful of making sure that we're allowing for the spectrum of different housing and allowing for types of change and types of incremental change where people can make the changes to their properties themselves to either, maybe it's adding an accessory dwelling unit. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's, they've got a larger house and, now it's just like, the two parents that are there now, they want to think about splitting the house into a duplex, something like that, where the city is not the the barrier to that. There's things we can't control, that your codes covenants restrictions that are privately put in place. We can't do anything about those, but we can at least set it where when people ask what's going on with displacement, hopefully it's not saying, hey, the city is causing this because of X, Y, and Z. Make sense?
I think I'm also looking at it in terms of, which I love hearing all of that. My grandma actually lived off of 12th and Airport for decades, for a really long time. And so she also got priced out and pushed out like into the ETJ area of Travis County. But I also think that if I remember correctly, and I don't know if it's on one of the slides, but we already have drafted like the areas for subdivisions, I believe it was, or is that the things that we're anticipating? Because I look at anti-displacement also being tied to like the social determinants of health. And so when we talk about subdivisions, for example, we can determine connectivity between districts, commercial, residential, like cul-de-sacs being ways that you can use entry and exit points aside from like vehicle access points and whatnot. So I just want to be sure that we're also addressing those things within those parts of our code as well, because I think there's a lot to it that can vary.
Yeah, absolutely. So a few examples that you'll find of that. We have we're implementing connectivity ratios, for example, connectivity index. I don't like the term ratio; it's confusing for people. But connectivity index. There's also some requirements about like simply connectivity. Period. In terms of like how you're stubbing out, what are you connecting to existing stub outs? Are you creating a network that allows for ease of movement? Whether it's a car, whether you are walking, whether you're on a bike, whether you're on whatever mode of transportation is going to emerge next in the next decade. Trying to make sure that you're set up well for that, but also allowing for like creative solutions, thinking about, are you set up where you can allow for cottage courts, where you have fronting onto open space versus fronting onto street? How do you make that work? What are the implications for how you lay out your utility system when you do that? That's the thing that gets forgotten on cottage courts. So it's things like that we're trying to make sure that we're building into this so that you've got that there as a tool.
No, but I appreciate that. It sounds like we're like on the same page, on the right track. So I'm really excited to see how this turns out. I also just want to note too that there was some legislation that passed that had to do with like home-based businesses and like food, like cottage businesses. So if we could also figure out how we make that more friendly here for folks, because there's like a lot of people who've started like their own bakeries from their homes or like little coffee shops from their homes. And so being able to empower those individuals to like put out cute little signage and whatnot and so we can make some really like, make this place feel like home for folks within their neighborhoods.
Yeah, you're talking about like those, I forget what they define the term in the state law as like basically like low impact home-based businesses.
Exactly.
It's like 6 words, entirely too long.
They wanted to be very specific.
Yeah, they were very specific about
it.
But it has some very, very particular definitions for that.
Yes.
There's also kind of some separate regulations involving cottage food in particular, or cottage foods in particular, which has its own interesting set of definitions.
Yeah, they really upped the ante on it this past session. But yeah, I think just keeping in mind as we go on to be friendly to those businesses.
Sure.
Yeah.
I do want to address that because I saw in Austin they just did that. There's an Austin council member that promotes that. And I was reading the comments, and I just want to make sure if we're going to do that we're being thoughtful of the parking. Because I think that was a big complaint in the comments that I read was, oh, this is great for the neighbors that are not utilizing that. I want to do that. Now they're like, I can't find a place to park. So parking in Kyle is a little bit crazy. I just went to South Lake Ranch last week. Anyone that's been out there, I mean, you don't want a bakery in a cottage license in South Lake Ranch because it's already bombarded with students parking in that as well. So just being thoughtful of that as, seeing both sides of the coin. I know people who Bloodworth started from his home. Like that's a big barbecue place. So I do encourage, and I love that idea people picked up, but just being thoughtful of the parking as well. I apologize in advance. I'm not sure the displacement that exists in Kyle. So could you give some examples of like what would cause that and how we could avoid that?
Sure. So I can try to answer that. And what I do is to kind of draw this as a contrast to other places. Most other cities only have the anti-displacement conversation. It tends to be after it's too late, more often than not, because you don't recognize it until it's like right in front of you. At that point, there's enough market forces pushing it that it is very, very hard to slow down or stop. So what I see happening in Kyle in this conversation is you've kind of have seen this happen elsewhere in this corridor. So you're kind of thinking about, okay, we don't want to have that happen here. I don't know if I could put a finger on where that has actually happened here yet, but you see it in other ways. Sometimes you see it as in the form of, the farm that was somewhere for a long time, and then, nobody wants to inherit the farm, and then it gets, sliced up into lots. That's a form of displacement. There's, the kids that grew up here, go to Lehman High School, they graduate, they come back, but do they have access to housing? That's actually a form of displacement because they can't come back to where they grew up. So those are things that are out there that do happen. Those are common examples, often not thought of.
Are those
But,
things that the city can control? So for example, I'm very aware of the Lehman farm what's the Jensen farm on Lehman. And if they sold it, or in your case, just, farms in general, that's not something that the city can control.
Right. Yeah,
So-
you can't control that, right?
Yeah, and I guess I would be curious when you say someone left and they came back and they couldn't, what would be the reasons they couldn't come back?
It would be usually housing affordability. That's your driver.
Okay, so ultimately it's going to be housing affordability. Okay.
Yeah, it'd be either,
Okay.
it's housing affordability or it's access to employment. But but kind of what you see in those conversations with it, like a city cannot completely address it on their own. What you can do is have in place regulatory approaches that seek to minimize the impact of it or seek to avoid it. But there's things that you just don't have control over. But you can at least set it up where you're not part of the problem.
Yeah, and that's why things like ADUs are like a huge part of that. And like having like mother-in-law suites and whatnot is like also a huge part of that. And so I think that's why I'm also stressing about it as a part of our code, just to make sure that we're making it easier for folks to be able to continue living here.
And I would say on the displacement front, we are working with Freese and Nichols and with Housing Works to ensure that we are, collecting data and that our two plans, so to speak, are talking to each other and are well integrated.
Perfect. All right, any other questions, comments? All right, you guys got what you needed?
So the one thing that I would say is, as we talked about, we're going to be looking to a joint planning commission and council meeting sometime in the June, July timeframe. So we'll be reaching out to you through the city secretary's office to work on trying to get that scheduled. Okay?
Think about maybe picking a P&Z date and having you come to that.
Oh, perfect. That's
Having a
perfect.
joint like we did before.
Yeah.
I really like that when we had a joint P&Z council meeting where we all of us sat here and we just dissected a lot of housing options and things like that. Everything that you're trying to address, Ms. Zapata, is exactly what we're doing, because we could be able to pinpoint also specific parts of the city that we felt were either getting neglected or overpopulated, and it was just a combination of that. We did have one time a developer try to come in and wanted to do that kind of renting housing scenario, and we're just kind of not on the fence on it. But it's just looking at the overall picture of what it is as we continue to grow.
That will be a very valuable session for us and,
Yeah.
and how we can establish priorities and where we go from here.
Because we had planning and zoning just going back and forth on it, so yeah.
It's gonna be tons
it
of
was.
fun.
It was so- yeah.
Tons of
It was a
fun.
good win, yeah.
We're gonna be sitting all here, it's gonna be lovely.
Oh, yeah, it was really good.
If it's okay, I'm gonna give Jennifer and Cynthia some dates, but probably try to hit one of those P&Zs, so it'll be another.
All right, yay. Thank
Yeah.
you. We'll take it.
That's cool.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, we have agenda item 5, receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff feedback on the facilities master plan updates. I have item presenter Chris Arnold.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Chris Arnold, Deputy Director, Transportation and Public Works. I'm here tonight to provide you with a brief presentation over our master plan study that we completed late last year. I think most of you are here for that study as it was presented, but I think a few of you are new since we presented that. So I'm just going to give you a brief overview. Hopefully this information will help you make a little bit better informed decisions as we move forward with the next agenda item that's coming up after this. So phase one of the facilities master plan study was presented to council last December, and it provided a comprehensive assessment of the current and future space needs of our city departments. It was initiated in response to our rapid population growth, the increase for staffing needs that comes along with that, and the need to ensure that City Hall and public safety can meet continue to support the operations of our citizens. This update that I'm about to provide summarizes the major findings and the options identified in the original presentation to support our upcoming planning and budget discussions and the next steps. So as I was saying, the purpose of the study, and this was phase one of a two-phase study that we're proposing, phase two is coming up pretty shortly, is to assess our staffing needs and space needs for the next 5 years. Phase one focused only on City Hall and Public Safety Center. That's important to note. And of course, like I mentioned, phase two scoping is currently underway. The scope of the work involved the as-built verifications and facility tours of all of the facilities at City Hall and Public Safety Center. They did spatial observations. They looked at our IT infrastructure. They looked at growth trend analysis, and they used those analysis to recommend space standards and benchmarking. They put together some department programming that will last from 25 through 2030. Growth and resulting space demand. If you look at our population growth, we still remain one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. Our 2030 projected population is estimated to be about 78,000, and that's the average of 3 sources that our consultant gave to us. PSC and City Hall, when you look at their 5-year staffing needs alone, they project that they're going to need 91 new staff over the next 5 years. And that includes about 21,000, 22,000 square feet of minimum additional space needed to meet those standards. When we looked at all the department 5-year staffing and space needs, total across, and this includes parks and some of the other divisions, was 113 staff to support the space, the needed space across all city departments. They'll need about 25,000 net square feet for that. Some of the departments that had sufficient space when we looked at the PSC, the police department, city management, communications, talent, culture, which talent, culture, and city attorney, and the legal department, and our IT support. Departments with insufficient space were transportation and public works, strategic development, finance, parks and recreation, and Parks and Recreation was outside of the scope, but we do know there's constraints with that department as well. And of course, all of these departments reside in City Hall currently. The key dependencies on some of the investigation was the water utilities and TPW headquarters that are being proposed. We're hopefully having that done by maybe the end of 28 into early 29. And then, of course, the animal control facility that everybody's aware of. Some of the options for addressing the space needs that the consultant came up with was our immediate options, which were short-term adjustments within PSC and City Hall, and we have already completed all of those. We've added several new cubicles. Those are about 16 to 20 square foot cubicles for staff. We've remodeled storage rooms. We've remodeled broom closets, and some of those areas have 2, 3, 4 people working in those spaces. Some of the delayed options that we looked at were space improvements after the TPW and animal control relocations are completed. And then obviously there's new construction. We could repurpose a facility, we could go out and we could buy something, but we're looking at something anywhere from 21,000 to 30,000 square feet. And there would probably be a significant cost with that, having to remodel it and make it suitable for our needs. And of course, last but not least, is a new City Hall that would support 146 new staff. It would need to be about 64,000 square foot, and the cost of that is anywhere from $64 to $68 million. And the timeline's 28 to 2030, if that ever happens. Now with that, after that investigation, we're going to come up with phase 2. Hopefully we're going to bring that to you at the end of May in the second council meeting. And the purpose of that is we're going to continue to build on phase 1. We're going to assess the remaining facilities and we're going to support informed decisions on those renovations, maybe expansions, consolidate, and some of the new facilities. Those facilities that we're going to look at are the Public Works Building that's out on 150, the Public Library, the Parks Administration Buildings, which is Veterans Drive, Lake Cowell, and Republic Drive, and then, of course, the wastewater treatment plant. And then as far as the planning approach for that, we'll look at the existing condition assessments, the department need assessments, and then we'll work on master planning anywhere from 26 out to 31, which is 5 years, and maybe even looking forward out further in the future, depending on what the scope of work is going to be. So that's the end of the presentation. Are there any questions?
All right, does anybody have any questions or comments? Councilmember Medina.
On your department space sufficiency, that slide, you mentioned the animal control facility will free up space for police. If I remember from my initial tour of the police department side, the animal control right now is just utilizing one room within the police department. Is that correct?
Yes.
So how much space realistically does that free up for police?
Well, part of that, I think the part of that relocation is some of the staff that's
Right, there's
working-
some offices there
Right.
too. I don't know how many, I know Brianna office is there, and I don't know how many other offices are in that location, but I think you're thinking of where some of the kennels were out in that larger area. We can get you that specific number, but it's more than just that one space. There are some offices back there too that can be repurposed.
Right.
So it just seems a little contradictory to me on that slide that police have sufficient space right now, but then you're relying on space to be freed up by animal control for the police.
Right. So as the police department continues to grow, they're going to need more space currently out at the PSC. So as they grow and they need more space, some of those offices that are there at the PSC could be relocated to the new animal control facility.
Okay. And then I just want to kind of dissect the staff memo that I was looking over in preparation for the meeting. It talks about, just like this slide, the development of the water utilities and transportation and public works headquarters. And then in the staff memo, it says Q4 of 2027.
Right.
Is that the proposed building we were talking about by the prison facility?
Yes, by the correctional facility, that's it. That 27 is probably not accurate. That's going to be pushed out a little bit farther.
Yeah, I was going to say, because how long would that take to be built?
Yeah, we're
if
hoping
it were
by
to be built?
Q4 of 28, possibly into early 29.
Okay. And then kind of the same for the animal control facility. It's kind of hard to say how much space you would have there to rehouse folks when we don't have any building scope back on that design yet to even know how big city council is going to approve that to be.
Right, and that'll be a part of the scope too. Whenever they come in and they do that assessment, they'll look at, they'll be able to work with the consultants on these buildings, hopefully, and get a little more information on what's going to be available and where we can move staff around and relocate those to make more office space.
So is it a fair assumption that the facilities master plan may not be able to be completely final until we have approval on that building for the transportation and public works headquarters and the building scope for the animal shelter facility?
Yes, I think to get a true assessment of what we have available and what we're going to need, we'll have to wait on those.
Okay. Just wanted to kind of clarify because it kind of spoke otherwise in the memo, made it seem like we already kind of had that information and knew this is what we were looking at.
We are working with the architect for the new water utilities building, and we kind of have an idea of how large it's going to be and the office space that we need, but we're still in the early phases of that programming.
For the transportation and public works?
Yes.
Okay. Even though the property hasn't been approved yet as to where the building would go to know how big it can be?
Right.
Got it.
But the council has authorized a planning effort to take a look at various options, to look at how big it could be, where it would be located. And that's the kind of information that Chris is referring to. It's just
Okay.
preliminary data that we have. Certainly, it's not been approved by the council. It may or may not happen. But we're trying to take in all the input that we can from all these different points to give you the best picture that we can.
So it'd be fair to say architectural size for the building depended upon the one of the three different sites that it could be located on then? Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Tobias?
Yeah, on that note there, I remember we gave you, there was a 60-day notice to be able to bring something back and to have like different kind of concept designs, because we couldn't really know exactly how you put the price on something if you don't know how big the walls are going to be or how large the space was going to be. And I know that we were going to also do possibly an open house to, once those designs were kind of set forth before we brought to us, we would let the people see on that note there. Have we looked at other facilities? I know we got one proposal on the next agenda item as far as an office space. Have we looked at other areas within Kyle, even over there by the Majestic area, about as far as some of those warehouses? Because I've driven out there a couple times. I see a lot of those big buildings there that are for lease and so forth, or for sale. Have we looked at any of those as a possible site for some of these, for these office spaces that we could maybe convert into an office space? I mean, I know you're looking at 2,100 square feet, 30,000, but what other areas have we actually looked at in Kyle that already has pre-built a facility that's vacant or opened up that we could possibly look at as maybe a purchase or besides the lease?
I do know, since I've been here about 3 years, and we did look at two different locations. One was the Blue Compass RV facility that's
Yes.
out on I-35. We did look at that shortly after I started working here, and,
Mhm.
and at that point, you know, it wasn't feasible to even look at purchasing that piece of property because we didn't really need it at the time.
Okay.
We can actually review that again and see, you know,
Yes.
what's available out there, because that's a great site. It's already got
It is.
bays. It's got
10,000 square
office
feet,
space,
and just the
plenty of
office
room
space.
for storage of equipment and things like that.
Yes.
And we looked at the Ferguson, the old Ferguson facility, I
Yep.
believe it is, over on Button Creek. We had looked at that. We'd actually called and tried to set up a meeting with them, but they had told us that it was already purchased at the
Okay.
time. So, but, you know, with that said, every time I drive by there, it still looks like it's vacant and nobody's working out of there. But we have checked on at least those two properties that I'm aware of.
Yes, the one right by the fire station.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that was another location that I was eyeballing as well to bring to y'all, because it had been vacant for a while now.
Yes, sir.
So I'm looking at those types of buildings whenever the city has been always asking or looking at different spots, because, you know, of course, the community senior building, driving by it many times, brought it to attention, now we have it. Same thing when I go around on Republic Drive, saw a lot of those empty warehouses, and now we have it for the rec building, and then we have the senior building that's coming up. So I'm always kind of looking at it, because if we go and say we want to build a brand-new facility, or if we go to bond or something like that, we are looking at close to about 60 million or so forth, where if there's any sites or any other buildings that are vacant in around town, is that we could possibly look at, you know, utilizing some of those spaces. I know we'd have to outfit it for what we're trying to get at, but I think if we can continue down that path and see what available spaces are available around town, we can maybe kind of have it go from there. I know that it would be short-term, but we could look at, see, again, what we could utilize even on the outskirts.
Yeah, we're always on the lookout for new properties. You know, some of the staff that drive around will give me a call and say, hey, look at this one, you know, it's up for sale, or, you know, something like that. And we've looked at least 4 different lease spaces to lease for office space, but there's always an issue with them. Either, you know, it's large enough, but it's just a shell space and,
Yeah.
and it needs build out, which will
Yes.
cost, you know, quite a bit, or there's not enough parking, or it's just not big enough. You know, there's always an issue that we run into. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has
Yes.
to be close to.
But that would be the ideal thing. Number one would be parking spaces, because again, if we're bringing on 144 people, times 2 cars apiece possibly, plus you need visitors and you got customers or residents, you know, you're gonna have to increase that parking lot
And
size.
our friends
obviously.
out of Republic Drive are running into that issue right now with the
Yep.
parking and the parts department.
Yep.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Zapata?
Yeah, and I have like flashbacks to also working in a warehouse because I did Hurricane Harvey disaster response. So it was like a warehouse, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, just like FEMA work. It was crazy. So I'm getting like flashbacks to it. But I also think the last time that we talked about this in December, I had asked if we could look at like telework options in order to help ensure that we have some cost savings. I was going, in preparation for this. In 2024, there was a report by the Legislative Budget Board made to our Senate Finance Committee. And it was a survey of 96 agencies, so like thousands and thousands and thousands of employees being represented amongst those 96 agencies. And they all reported really great outcomes. I think in one instance, the Texas Workforce Commission noted that they had saved over like just $930,000 in like lease and like the necessity to build out some of these spaces. And I remember at that time in December, we had said that we would look into like administrative, non-public facing staff being able to work from home. And so I just wonder if there was an update on that, because I was told that it would be included in the count of these, I guess, in the presentation, but I'm not seeing it there. So I think I'm just wondering, like, what that looks like if we've explored that option, and if so, what that looks like.
Yeah, we have looked at options like that for certain staff that can work from home. I think probably as part of the phase 2 scope that we bring to you with the next phase of that, we can really dive into those positions, the ones that work from home, and maybe make a determination at that point.
Okay, because I think that could potentially help with some of the space. I know it's not the only solution. And then I also think what I'm hearing is that we're going to need a short-term solution immediately while we work on the long term.
Right.
With that being said, is there a preference to kind of have one area, such as like a bigger warehouse, like a larger one that we lease out that can hold more staff, versus while we wait on something long term while council makes the decision on how it is that we move forward? Or what do you think would be best here?
Well, I think open spaces are good because you can put cubicle areas in those and you can have staff work in there, with, as long as it has an area to meet, conference space or something like that. A shell building is not a bad idea that can be utilized. We can go in there and construct walls or whatever we need to do to build any private offices that we may need. But we figure we probably need about 2,000 square feet to be able to meet those needs. And as I was telling Council Member or Mayor Pro Tem Tobias, that we had looked at several other spaces, 3 or 4 other spaces, and they just didn't meet the needs because they were shell spaces, but it was going to cost quite a bit of money to go in there and refurbish those to meet our needs.
So I guess the option then would be kind of the one that's on the next agenda item, which is like that kind of ready to lease space. Okay, I want to make sure that we're not just pushing this out like as a problem for, I guess, future issues when we have issues right now that we need to solve for.
Right. The ultimate goal is long-term solutions. And we're trying to project out, 15 years down the road, 20 years down the road, trying to project what we need. But now we're at a point where we just don't have any more space for staff to work.
No, and I know from just different tours and from photos that are shown that we have individuals who are working in one office and it's like 5 people stuffed in there, and that also includes management. And one thing that I was thinking about is, it's like Costco takes really great care of their workers and they have high quality service for their customers. So, that's how we need to look at it too, is apply that same principle of taking care of our staff and our workers and making sure that they have like dignified working spaces to be able to carry out to better serve our residents. So thank you.
Like the Hayes Commerce Center area over there off of Chula Hills Drive, I know those are empty out there. So we've looked around on that side of town as well, correct?
We have. I may not have looked at those specifically.
Yeah. I know right up there in Vista Ridge Drive, I know there's quite a few buildings that say for lease and all that, so 21,000 square feet and so forth.
21,000? Okay.
So
All right, I have a few questions myself. Do we have the current available space that we have right now? I would like to see how much space we have versus how much staff we have. Also, I do have a concern with the master plan. It talks about constant growth, but what I would like to see, because this year our revenues were down because we didn't grow as predicted. And so what is a plan B if we don't, like, can we have different scenarios? Like if we grow at this rate, if we grow at that rate, that way we can kind of prepare accordingly. Also, I would like to identify and assess city-owned properties. I know we have the police department, I still call it the old police department, but just with some research, and I'm by no way a professional, but there's these like modular buildings that you can use. Some of them are really cool looking, and they have an upstairs and a downstairs, and maybe the idea of placing that on one of the properties that we currently own, I think would be a good investment, if nothing else. And then in December's presentation, there was supposed to be a meeting with stakeholders, and I was wondering when that is going to be planned.
I believe we had the meeting with the stakeholders, did we not, during the phase one? Yeah. Right, so. Right.
Okay, now, so are those stakeholders, those aren't residents, or they are?
They are not.
Okay.
Well, I just want to make sure we're clear. Are we talking about the new facility that was being constructed? That
Yeah.
we were looking at the property next to the corrections facility? Is that what you're referring to, or something else?
No, well, in this original presentation from December, it just said meeting with stakeholders. So my assumption was you guys were going to meet with the residents, but maybe there's a different set of stakeholders, and I just misunderstood.
Hi, I'm Mike Trimble, Transportation Director. So the stakeholders refer to the other departments, and so we have multiple departments and multiple functions that we have. And so the stakeholders refer to internal stakeholders to get all of that feedback on space needs, how you've grown already as staff, what your projections might be, and those were all inputs that went into that first phase. And we're going to build upon that in phase two as well.
So for this master plan, we're not getting any resident feedback?
Not so far, but if that's a desire to do that in a phase two, we could definitely look at that as part of the scope.
Okay. In the presentation, it shows, I don't know if it's 91 plus 113 or 113 altogether, but it shows new employees. And for example, the finance department has 20 employees, and I would like to see a breakdown of those employees, like what positions are we hiring for? Because that's going to more than double that department. So just ensuring that we are having, we're not doing more than, planning for more than what we need. So I'd like to know which new staff that's going to be. I'd also like to know where the funding is going to come from this. Is this going to be CO bonds? Is this going to be GO bonds? Is this going to be CIPs? And then on options for addressing space needed, it looks like the estimated total cost if we update this city hall is going to be anywhere, if I average it 65 million, let's just say 65 million, that breaks down to over $1,000 a square feet. And so I would like to see a breakdown of that. Where did you guys come up with that number, and what is that going to include?
Yeah, so Mayor, just want to let you know, I think a lot of the things you're asking for, we're actually going to be looking to do in phase two. And so we're looking to bring that back later in May, that scope for your consideration. So we can also take some of the feedback we're hearing tonight just to make sure we're covering some of those bases in that scope.
Okay, I appreciate that. One of my biggest concerns is going to be the different scenarios for growth to make sure that we're covering all aspects. So if we get to like the second year and the growth isn't what we thought it was, one way or another, then we will be able to prepare without having to do a whole nother master plan. All right, any other questions or comments? Councilmember Goza.
To add to what you asked for, I would like to see when we're looking at the funding sources, like what the impact to our tax levels is going to be, especially since it will most likely have to be bonded out. We already have a pretty high interest and sinking rate, so we want to be very, very mindful of what we're planning out for the future for, our residents to pay for.
All right, moving on. Thank you very much. All right, up next, we have agenda item 6, receive a report, hold a discussion, and provide staff direction regarding near-term office space needs for Transportation and Public Works Department, the staff located at City Hall. Item presenter is Lou.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. We're bringing forth this item for a discussion on the current space issues that we're experiencing, as well as some of the options that we've looked at. So currently, we're talking about probably a quarter of the City Hall upstairs that is shared among the following functions. We have CIP division, we have engineering, we have traffic, transportation, stormwater, land acquisition, and also management assistant. And we're experiencing a lot of space issues. So I just want to show kind of an original City Hall floor plan that's probably 20 years ago. The space that we're talking about is outlined in red. And that space was really designed for 3 offices, 1 planned storage room, and also 4 cubicle spaces. And this is our current configuration. We're sharing most of the offices. The worst office is shared among 6 people. And also we have added 5 additional cubicles. So there's 9 cubicles in that area. And currently this space is shared among 21 staff members. And also 3 of them are executive level. And we have 1 CIP staff, 1 project manager that's fully working remote, and also another CIP project manager is working out of construction site job trailers full-time. So the current configurations, we have multiple staff sharing offices. We're having a lot of issues with when they're on calls together, we're in online meetings, they're not able to turn on their cameras, and we can hear one another. We're on meetings together, usually different meetings. And then multiple staff are working remote and with a hybrid work style as well, because with that office that's shared by 6 people, we regularly have 4 or 3 or 4 people there, but 2 of them have to alternate days. And also inhibits team collaboration and communication. And one of the functions that we're trying to support for the engineering function is to be able to design in-house. And when engineers work, I like to describe it as kind of a war table. You can see us all huddled around the map trying to plan out project, plan out the best routes. And without that collaboration, it really decreases our efficiency. And even with the project managers, we have so many projects that are either overlapping or adjacent, and they share traffic control. And when I think we have 6 project managers, each of them have at least 1 project that is under construction, and we want to make sure that we manage out detours, traffic controls, and active work zones. We offer some flexibility. They choose to come into the office to see one another. And also our current space per employee in that section is significantly below the minimum space needs identified for the phase 1 facility master plan. And this is just the pictures of our 9 cubicle space in that hallway. And currently, if you're looking at between the cubicle space, we're looking at about 36 inches. And also the shared office among a lot of staff members there. We did consider quite a few options. Actually, one of our favorite was that similar modular office building, if we can put it right by City Hall in that empty lot next to it. However, this was not allowed by city ordinance. For this area, the requirement was to have the building 90% masonry, and the modular office building just cannot meet that requirement. We're also explored possibility of additional sharing offices and adding cubicle space. And that space right now is fully maxed out without us violating building safety regulations and ADA requirements. And also, we're already experiencing a lot of noise. People cannot have private meetings, private conversations everybody fights for the 2 conference rooms in City Hall. Third option is looking at the Kyle Water Utility and TPW headquarters, but that's really a long-term solution. As Chris just mentioned, we're probably not looking at a completion until 3 years later, and we're trying to figure out a way to resolve our more current constraints with space. And the last option we were looking at is lease space. We were more looking for adequate amount of square footage to support multifunction from the CIP and stormwater, and also look for more move-in ready office spaces. In general, these kind of lease space options are quite limited in Kyle to support the space requirements and function to operate, and we looked at 2 locations. We compared the amount of parking space that we have available. We also compared if they're move-in ready, if there's additional work that facility needs to perform before anybody can utilize that space for office use. And also we compare the location in relativity to the current city facility, because we do not be far away from our sibling departments as well, and we do a lot of communication with other departments. And then this second space that fits our needs is located right off 35 frontage between City Light and Physician Way. It's plus or minus 2445 square foot, and based on the walkthrough conducted by staff, the proposed office space will include 3 private offices, a large conference room, and also a open floor to accommodate for adequate number of cubicles for the rest of our project managers. And the proposed lease term we're looking at, because it's a short-term solution and we want to accommodate before we get the headquarters, it's a 3-year lease with 2 months, the first 2 months being free. First year is $90,470, and then there's a 3% increase on the base rates. We're looking at a total cost for the lease portion, $278,010. This space is move-in ready upon lease execution, and we do need additional setup for IT services and furniture, and we're looking at about 2 months before this place can be fully utilized. This lease term include a base rent. It's an annual 3% increase starting at year 2, and also it's a triple net contract, so it includes real estate taxes, insurance, and an estimated common area maintenance. It's estimated at $7 per square foot, and I'll show it more on the next slide. This kind of encompassed all the total cost that we're looking at for a 3-year term. And CIP did have savings from our current operational budget that can be used to cover this. And we understand this is not the most ideal situation, but we would really appreciate your feedbacks and comments.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Goza?
Okay. First, I have some concerns because this property is advertised at $28 a square foot. So did we have a real estate agent try to negotiate this? How was this proposal obtained?
We do not have a real estate on behalf of the city to help us negotiate, but we certainly, because we just got a draft agreement, not even agreement, kind of a sheet from them. So we're happy to go back and revisit, but I cannot speak to it as that's all the information I was provided.
Okay, so the owner or the agent has been authorized, like he's offering tenant improvement allowance. So typically when you've got a property that's offering tenant improvement allowance and you don't need to make changes to it, you negotiate an even further downward rate. So I have a lot of concern about the rate that we're being charged. And the $7 a square foot can also be very variable, so we would really need a better idea of, are these consistently accurate? So of course, as their taxes go up, that triple net is going to go up. If there's any difference in common area maintenance, that needs to be looked at as well, because that can make that rate go up substantially. We would also want to look at what particular maintenance and repairs would need to be done during that term. And initially, when I was looking at it, when we were looking at a FY '27 completion of that facilities, then I was worried about why are we doing a 3-year when, there's a year and a half left that we're not able to utilize. So those are my concerns with that. And I'm happy to go and speak with that broker in order to help negotiate that and see if we can get a much lower rate. But it is concerning that it's, utilizing prime retail space. So it may be not as big of a difference as we would like. Retail space is very expensive. So there's a lot of warehouses and things like that that are much cheaper that we could possibly rent. But I know y'all looked at a couple of them, but I think it would be worth revisiting some of those options.
Absolutely. We'll be more than happy to explore additional options.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Tobias.
I think, in fairness to the city, they're trying to find what's available. And I think sometimes you're right. You may have a owner of a building. They may look at us and say, "Well, we're going to charge them more because of whatever it is." But again, I'm not in that field or in that business. It does look like because I'm looking at this term lease. If you're saying that if we go with this, we're out 2 months because we have to outfit it. What also would be the cost for the IT, for the fitting, the furniture, and everything else. So even though we may have a total cost of the first year of $90,000, that may not include furniture, cables, anything else like that, right? And 3 years go by quick, and then next thing you know, either we sign a new lease, which will probably be more, or we vacate it, and then we lose out on some of those fundings. So I don't want it to look like we're attacking this proposal. Like, I know you guys are in a crunch. I know you guys are, the city is trying its best to utilize what space is out there. So I think in this instance, I do agree with Councilmember Goza saying that, where's the dollar at on that? Because our process here is the finances. For us, we look at it, the money. That's all that council worries about as on that sense is just how much it's going to cost. There is no argument that everybody's sitting on each other in those offices. We know that. I remember going to the Lake Kyle and walking in there when my son was volunteering 2 summers ago, and there was just boxes piled up where Claudia was, and some of the people were sitting on those boxes with a computer, and they were getting ready for the festival there. So there's no doubt, ma'am, that we know that the city is at a crunch. We're just trying to find the best reasonable space available for everybody, and we have to decide if our finances is best to do short term, or if we just go ahead and bite the bullet, and that's where we as a council is going to have to eventually say, we're going to pull the trigger on this. If we're going to do this, we got to execute it versus coming back and saying, I don't support it. We have to really look at that. And I think what would really help is when we get a bigger picture on our dollars, on our finances, if we can see where we're at, we can make it help have a better idea of what we can really spend on that end. But if there's other areas that you can think of that you can probably look, that way we can keep it, all the employees together. I did have a resident reach out saying that, that in today's world, hybrid works a lot better. But for morale and for meetings, as much as I was frustrated the other day with the Lake Kensington meeting, it was my connection. I could not connect. I couldn't hear what was going on. I couldn't see a lot of the pictures. We had a task force meeting that Dr. Harris was there, and I tried so hard to just listen, and we had to use a cell phone just to be able to, for me to be able to hear. So technology always doesn't do very well, So having hybrid meetings does help in some sense, but not all the time. And I think just having that collaboration of having people together really helps in that sense.
Absolutely. Okay, sorry. Absolutely. I do want to provide you the information that I currently have. So additional cost-wise, we look at very preliminary IT setup that includes security, that includes the door, the swipe thing, and internet. We're looking at roughly $42,000. And furniture-wise, I'm trying to go cheap. I was planning on just getting Amazon. I can keep it under $10,000.
And Mayor Pro Tem, I just wanted to speak more directly to your comment on the hybrid working and all of that. And we have explored that. I think Chris mentioned a little bit that we do have some staff right now that are working hybrid. We have some staff that are working full-time remote. Some of that's out of necessity. Some of that's because we're able to make that work. It's tough to do with new staff, though. And so, like, in Lou's area, in the CIP area, we have 4 new staff, 2 new project managers and 2 new project coordinators, which are sorely needed for the amount of work that they're doing. But for the new staff in particular, we have other staff that we're trying to bring on board. We don't have space for them, but it's hard to get them trained up and acclimated to how we function if they're working fully remote, right? And so we need to have some way to have the cohesion, have the collaboration, particularly on like CIP projects. You guys know the level of lift and effort it takes to get that stuff done. And so we really work, to Lou's point, kind of in the workshop, trying to work together to get these things done. And so it's just difficult to do that with making everybody remote, making everybody hybrid. We can look at, and we'll continue to look at ways that we can stagger hybrid work schedules and all of that. It's just even with all of that and exploring all that, we're still having the space issues.
Thank you. Councilmember Zapata?
How much is that modular office building? Like, have we considered that, like what the cost of that would be, what that would look like?
Yeah. I think water utility did purchase 2 modular office buildings.
I think it was last budget year we brought an item up. We didn't bring it up, but we had investigated a modular building, and to lease a modular building or to rent it, it was about $270,000 a year, and to purchase it was around $750,000 a year. And that comes with everything. That includes the furniture, the AC units, and they're modular sections that can be moved in and attached together. They have restrooms on each end. They're really nice.
So it would be more cost-friendly than this current option that we're being presented. That's what I'm hearing.
No, not yet.
If we leased it.
I think it's,
Because
well,
I
even
think
if we bought it, we could put it in different areas.
Right. So,
Yeah.
so leasing it is one thing, but finding a place to locate it is another.
Because I'm just wondering, I don't know, is there anything that we can do just so we can just, put it up right there, solve all our problems? Like, to me, that just seems like the easiest path forward. I mean, in my mind, I don't know how that actually plays out, but I would like for us to see how we can explore that.
I like that.
Well, I would just say, I mean, really the thrust of this item is to identify that we have a space shortage and some real space issues that we need to solve for. We're trying to give some options here with a lease, but if that's not the direction you want us to go, and you want us to go back and let's look at this modular building and try to find a location and what give you kind of an all-in, we can certainly come back with that to you. There's a lot of ways to approach it, but we're all thinking these are some short-term moves that we would need to make over the next few years to bridge the gap to some longer-term facility. And so how we do that, we're open to any of those things, but we wanted to get that issue on the table for you so you would understand that there is an issue, get some consensus that we agree there's an issue or what the scope of that issue is, so then we can try to problem solve with you.
Okay, because I'm just like, we couldn't do some sort of like emergency ordinance, grant some exception.
You could probably take it through the P&Z. P&Z could probably approve some waiver.
Approval and possibly a variance.
Right, so some kind of variance could be done that way, yes.
Okay, because I'm just like, if it's better for staff, cost savings for residents, easiest path forward, it just seems like a no-brainer to me. But,
Okay.
of course, like that's something that the full council would explore.
I have that written down. I think it's a great idea. I did a brief search, and they had some really amazing ones, and I don't know how it could fit, because I know we have water and other things right where the police department was, but we also have so many other spaces, and my goal is always to kind of keep staff together. I also have an office that I'm willing to like put some cubes in, and you guys can come and work over there as well. Our offices are really big, and so I think maybe even retrofitting those to add more cubicles, I think that's a good idea. The feedback that I received was the residents are wanting us to look at a more permanent, long-term solution. Work from home came up a lot. But you know, we're civil service, and so I feel like face fronting is important. Also, there was somebody, his name was Colin, he's a resident, and he was telling me that Austin rents a lot and now, or leases, and they're having a hard time. They want to get out of it. They said it's just too costly. And so I would also, if for some reason we go forward with this, would like a total cost. I know you just talked about an additional $52,000. And so if we happen to go this route, I would like to know the total cost, so that way we can have a good comparison. I like the idea of these modular places. If you guys could bring that back for us to consider, and then maybe some places that you guys would like to stick them, and then a time frame, I think that would be really great.
Yes, certainly.
Okay. Councilmember Medina.
So just some comments. I want to start by saying I do recognize the challenges that staff is facing, and I absolutely want to support and make sure that everyone gets the space that they need. But I do have concerns about the current direction. From a fiscal standpoint, I take very seriously our responsibility to steward our taxpayers' money, and I want to make sure that we're not putting a temporary solution on a more permanent problem, long-term problem. And as we discussed in item number, 5, our facilities master plan isn't complete. We're still looking at that phasing out for completion maybe another year from now, depending upon the approval of the other 2 facilities. And that's 91 projected growth over the next 5 years. But that may not be, depending upon the actual growth. So we don't want to rely too heavily on that projection right now. But timing really is also a factor here. I mean, in the next 6 months, we're not going to get 20 of those 91 employees hired in. That's, a long-term projection. So I think the fact that we're fixing to go through a transition with our city manager, we're fixing to go into budget preparations, this would be something that I'd really feel more comfortable bringing back after, so that we have more of an understanding of our priorities, our staffing, and our long-term goals once the transition with city manager is complete and the budget process is complete. We know then more what we have to work with financially for our taxpayers. That's just my thoughts.
All right, do you need any other feedback, or you guys good?
I think we got this. Yeah.
All right,
Well,
thank you.
so the direction is to bring you back some options? Right?
Yes,
Right?
yes, please.
Potentially with the modular and potentially with the budget, just to bring some information
Yes,
back.
if we could bring it
Okay.
back, like how it would be funded, that would be fantastic.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Keep looking, keep
looking.
keep swimming, Dora would say. Keep swimming.
All right, I do have a question. Since we're talking about this in executive, I think, can we take an executive, go talk about the agenda, and then come back?
Yes,
And
yes,
then
ma'am. We can
do
do-
agenda item 7?
We can do item 1A first, an executive, and then we can come
Yes.
back and do item 7.
All right, so the city council will now go into executive session to discuss agenda item 1A. Under 551.071 and 551.074 pursuant to Texas Government Code, oops, I said that all backwards, pursuant to those 2 government codes. Thank you. All right, the time is 11:36. There was no action taken in executive, and there'll be no action taken now. I'm gonna go back as soon as Mark. Oh, Zapata and. Move with it. Back there. We had. All right, our last and final agenda item number 7, consider impossible action regarding the resignation of city manager, including acceptance of the resignation, determination of the effective date, and direction regarding transition. Item presenter me. All right, so we received Brian Langley's resignation dated April 7th with a final date in the office of May 8th and availability through May 15th. This item is to formally accept that resignation, confirm the effective date, and provide discussion on how we move forward as an organization. First, I want to acknowledge Mr. Langley's service to the city of Kyle. Although we didn't always see eye to eye, we stayed focused on the work and kept the city moving forward. Kyle is in a very different place today than it was 3 years ago, and that did not happen by accident. The procedures put in place during his time here had a real impact, and he played a direct role in that. For that, I appreciate and thank you, Brian, for your service. Our responsibility tonight is to make sure we're steady moving forward. In order to provide stability for our staff and our residents, this item needs to be clear on 3 things: acceptance of the resignation, the effective date, and how we handle the transition to interim city manager. As far as the effective date is concerned, I think it's important we align with the operational continuance, recognizing May 8th as Mr. Langley's last day in the office and discussing what we want the time through May 15th to look like. On the transition, I can't state enough how important stability matters to our staff and to our residents. Our staff needs direction, and it is important they understand who is giving it to them on the day one after Mr. Langley leaves. Our residents need reassurance that we are moving forward and making the best financial decisions on their behalf. As a council, that is our responsibility, and our goal should be to handle the transition deliberately and transparently. As far as the interim is concerned, there's an agenda item on the 21st scheduled for that discussion and decision that provides us with time to discuss and to be thoughtful. With that in mind, tonight is about setting a clear path. Our focus should be confirming the resignation, locking in the timeline, and making sure there's no gap in leadership. Staying disciplined in this discussion will provide our staff with the direction they need and our residents with the confidence they deserve. With that, do we have any discussion? I think, go ahead.
Brian, we've had conversations before, and I'll just leave it like we did last. Thank you for your service. I was the one who welcomed you the first meeting, and so just wish you the best of luck, Brian. And I know there may have been a time there where I felt that we would lose you. Didn't realize it was going to be this fast. But thank you for your service. Thank you for your commitment. Thank you for answering my calls, even on Sunday mornings when the lights were always going out. And so I just wish you the best, sir. Not much more I can say on that. I think you've got great opportunities ahead of you, and so I just wish you the best on that end, sir.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Mayor, for your comments as well. I just want to tell the council it's been a privilege to be your city manager, and I wish all of you nothing but the best, and I wish Kyle nothing but the best. You've got some great moments in front of the city and moments in front of you, and I know that you guys will provide great leadership to the city moving forward. So it certainly was not an easy decision to transition, but I will always fondly look back on my time here and just want to thank you guys for all the support you've provided to me over the last 3 years. I really do appreciate it, and thank you for your comments.
All right, any other comments? Okay, so what I want to preface with is your resignation said the 17th and 15th? Okay, so I'm trying to keep you an extra 2 days, but I also understand that you're going to be on vacation, so I'm completely okay. The payouts will be to the 15th, and then you'll be available to the 8th to the city?
Yes, ma'am. So I plan to be in the office through the 8th and to try to maximize that time for the transition, but then available all the way through the 15th. If you need me for any kind of consultation, issues that come up, I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Okay. We'll try not to bother you during that time. I know that is a vacation time. Okay. And then as we discussed, we're going to next on the 21st, which is Tuesday, just a few days away, we'll reconvene again in executive and we'll make a decision, hopefully at that time for the interim city manager. So with that, I would like to make a motion to approve agenda item 7.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion by myself, a second by Councilmember Goza. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes 7-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you. It's kind of sad. So, yeah, we're adjourned. I should just wait 5 more minutes, right?